creating like a person that is uniquely incentivized to create belonging and connection in the world. We know more people than ever before, but at the same time, we are like much less meaningfully connected. The share of Americans who have like zero close friends went from like 3% to 15%. Like half of American adults report being lonely. Feeling lonely is the equivalent to like smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Half of America smoking 15 cigarettes a day. A world that is like completely isolated is like a world in which humans go extinct.
You have said explicitly you're building a mutual friend. What are you trying to do?
It goes back to like a lot of the like simplicity of like, just go to our website and it's like, what do you mean you don't know what we're doing? It's like, I just told you. It's like, we're building a mutual friend. And then you're like, yeah, but what are you actually doing? It's like a mutual friend. And then I like usually like add some version of what we just talked about. And then they're just like, oh, you're building a mutual friend. And I was like, yes, I've been telling you. I think a lot of what we're thinking about and what we're creating starts actually counterintuitively not with the friend part, but the mutual part.
Do you think you're authentic?
My suspicion is that everyone is kind of the same in that we all have this like inner voice. And I think adulting in a lot of ways is like learning to not listen to that voice. I feel like I always just listen to that voice. And everything I've ever done, every major decision was always just like, I was like, okay, I know that it's like, this is just my voice and I just like, I have to do it. And I like followed my heart or whatever you want to call it. And maybe that's authenticity, or maybe that's something else.
Welcome to Dialectic, episode 47 with Paul Scherer. Paul is the founder of Eigen, a new company building a mutual friend for the world. That might sound bizarre. It kind of is. But I was thrilled to sit down with Paul after being introduced to him by a few people I really respect to talk about his crazy vision for a way that AI might actually make us less antisocial and instead bring us together by being somebody that we all know and who creates social serendipity in our lives. Eigen's pretty early on, the product's in private beta, and so we weren't able to talk about everything, but we were able to dive a lot into the substance of what it is, the philosophy behind why Paul and his team are working on it, in the ways that this introduces just a crazy new range of design problems for teaching, parenting, growing a sort of person that we might all know and that could actually make us closer to each other. Paul is very early on. He is young. I'm sure there are things he doesn't know, but I have to respect his conviction, his point of view, and the way he is authentically trying to bring something to the world that he thinks it needs. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Paul. Before we get into the episode, I'd like to thank Notion, Dialectic's presenting partner. Notion's co-founder, Akshay Kothari, is actually the one who introduced me to Paul. And so I'm thrilled to bring these two worlds together. Notion is a collaborative workspace for your life's work, and over the last year has totally evolved itself into becoming a platform and a hub for the agents that help you and your team do great work. Notion also made a bunch of new announcements on its developer platform recently. I'll link to that in the description. And the way that they're pushing what you can do with agents is really remarkable. And certainly if you haven't used Notion in a while, probably goes far and beyond what you can imagine for what's possible with Notion and with agents. You can learn more at notion.com/dialectic. I highly recommend you checking out what is now possible as Notion has built AI in from the ground up. With that, here is my conversation with Paul Scherer. Paul Scherer, thank you for having me here. We're in the Eigen office. Pretty specific type of space you've curated for yourself.
Yeah, it's really nice. We're very happy here. It's like, it's always like, I don't know, I think it's really important. I think a lot of people underestimate the power of space. We've spent a lot of time here and, you know, I think we spend much more time here than at home. So it's like, it's got to feel really great.
Well, I want to start by talking about this book that I had to hunt down, Momo, a book that's referenced in your video. And either it was a good story or seemingly it was very influential to you when you were young. It's a children's book. And in reading some of it, it seems to me that there were a few ideas that really stood out. The first is time, and playing this idea of past, present, and future. Second is presence, obviously an extension of that. The third is listening, which obviously relates to presence. And then the fourth is friendship. And so there's this smattering ideas that I think inform a lot of the other stuff we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what about this book stuck with you? I don't know when you first read it. I assume you were quite young.
Yeah, my dad read it to me. I was like, I don't know, I was like 8 or 10 or something like that. And it's like you read it again in like school, and it's like it's kind of like a thing in Germany. I think one of the things that really I think is very true is just like they have this like concept of time thieves, and I think it's really interesting because the book is like from 1973.
Yeah.
And so
A
it's
lot
just
of
like,
it felt pretty modern though.
well, this is the crazy thing. It's like pre-internet, pre like social media, pre, you know, real like personal computers or anything. This is like it's like at a time where I don't know, there was like a bunch of computers, but like most people didn't have a computer, right? And so it just feels like, you know, every year since then it's like become more relevant because it just describes so accurately kind of like the world we live in. It's just like everything is just about like efficiency, and it's about like you know, there's no there wouldn't be time for Momo in this world, right? Like people don't care. It's like, you know, how does this help me, you know, get you know, more efficient, or it's like more productive or whatever. And I think that's like really, I think it's always like a sign of like great work if it's like becomes more and more and more relevant over time. And I know I give it to a lot of people, and a lot of people really resonate with it.
You are a striver. I don't know if that's a perfect word, but it's probably a representative word, at least of this city, of this industry, of doing startups at all. You're someone who dropped out of college, or excuse me, high school when you were 17. Do you feel like you're running out of time?
I used to feel like that more. I don't know. I don't I haven't felt like that in a while. I think it's like I think, you know, for the first time ever, I feel like we're like doing the thing, and it's like there's like no real alternative. There's like, you know, I was doing all these other things, and I'm still like restless, but I feel like there's like there's like no way out. Like I couldn't like go and be like, okay, great, like let's, you know, whatever, do anything, something else. It's like this is the thing, and it's like, and so you sort of stop feeling like you're running out of time, because it's like there's no, you're actually playing your game. And it's like, and that's just the game, and the game is like you have to play it, and it's like it wouldn't be fun if you wouldn't have to play it. And but before I was feeling like I was playing the game, it was like, yeah, okay, like I need to play
I
the
need to
game.
get to the
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
I like that. Yeah, there is a way that it's not quite abundance, but there's something about once you've kind of found the thing, you're like, yeah, and I'm sure you're antsy in a whole bunch of ways around progressing this thing.
Yeah,
But it's like, oh yeah, I'm like, I'm where I'm supposed to be.
I call it like, you know, like I was talking about this with Akshay a while ago, and I was like, it's like short-term paranoia, but like long-term, like everything is everything is exactly the way it should be. It's like,
What about listening? It's kind of the anchor. Momo's this character, this little girl. I don't know if she's a little girl. She's a girl who lives in the village that they go to. And the reason they're initially skeptical, the reason they are so, they're able to be so present with her, all these things, she helps people deal with their beef, whatever, is she's just this amazing listener.
yeah,
And maybe there's an element of this, we'll talk more about it. Like, you are someone who certainly has a observational lens on human beings and the way people behave and are going to behave. But I'm curious if there's any thread there that felt resonant.
I think like what's so interesting is like she's like the polar opposite of the time thieves, right? So when the reason it's almost like less about the like listening and more about the, you know, the presence, but she's like the manifestation of like presence.
Yes. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and she listens so well because she doesn't look at her phone, you know.
Yeah.
She doesn't like feels like, oh, I have this like meeting 15 minutes from now, and I'm like looking at my watch, and I'm like, oh, I should
Just here.
probably need to go. And it's like she's just there with you 100%. And I think that's like that is like that's like so antithetical to the time thieves, because it's like they're like the manifestation of like, you know, you have to go, there's like everything needs to be like, and so she's just like fully there. And I think that's something that is like, very rare, because we all have, you know, so many things that are happening that are like, you know, trying to get our attention, trying to pull us in. And also so much like, you know, not all of this is like bad, right? It's like there's like a lot of opportunity, a lot of things that you could be doing at any given point in time. And so to be somewhere really present
There's an
without
opportunity cost.
thinking about, you know, the best listeners, or the hard thing about listening is you have to actually have to listen instead of like thinking about what you're going to say next, right? And that's a really hard thing to do, because you have to be truly present without any, almost like any skin in the game of like, I need to like achieve this or that or so. It's just like, or I need to like, you know, tell them, you know, like how great I am, or like, that's like when you don't really listen, but you're just like, okay, how can I like, can you give me something that I can then like say the thing that I want to say? And I think that's like really interesting because she's just, I wonder if like nonchalant is like the right word, but it's like she's just there. There's like no, it's like
There's a
just
sense
like
of ease,
Buddhist. Yeah,
perhaps.
yeah. And I think that's really remarkable.
Mm. Maybe that last bit, which is friendship. We're going to talk a lot more about friendship. You grew up in a remote place. What does it mean to be a friend?
The I don't know if there's like one definition that like works for every person. I certainly don't have it. I think there's like a few different themes. I think like great friends help you rediscover yourself. But they're also expansive and like in like surprising and delightful ways, and they add new things.
Yes.
And so there's really these two elements, right? There's like they ground you in who you are,
Yeah.
but they also like push you, and there's like they
Deeper
add
and
new
wider.
things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Mm. Maybe first of all, like I briefly just alluded to it, you grew up in a place, as I understand it, that is quite remote, or at the very least quite small, not that far from Frankfurt, but not in the center of things.
Yeah.
Now you are in San Francisco, you are in the center of things. How has the internet changed your life, and particularly on the dimension of relationships and people?
I think every single person, bar Samuel and my parents, that is in my life, I wouldn't have met without the internet. I think I was like 19 or 20, probably, I think it was like 20 years old when I met the first venture capitalist. Maybe I was 21. And it's like, I didn't know what that was, or there was like no, there's like this world did not like exist in my like world. I didn't know about it. And so, um, and neither, did like anyone in my like there's no one that I met that was like, oh, here,
You weren't one
was
step
like,
removed from it, right?
yes. And so, um, without the internet, I think I wouldn't like, I definitely wouldn't be here. And then all of these relationships, or so many of these relationships are, first or second order effective, like just like meeting people on, honestly, Twitter. It's like, I met, a while ago, I met one of the founders of Twitter. It was very, transformative, like, so it's like a bit like meet your hero, because it's like not even here, it was just almost a spiritual experience of like this person, so in such a profound way, like changed and shaped my life in like such a big way that I don't even know if I could recognize me as a person without that thing.
I've had a similar experience with that website in particular. What about Twitter? Well, maybe first of all, were you as a kid or growing up, especially before you started to tap into this, were you a social kid? Were you lonely?
I wasn't a very, I was like Marmite always. Like people either really like, I always made friends with some teachers, and so like some teachers always really really liked me, and then like some really hated me.
Yeah.
And then I always had like trouble with like people my age. It was like kind of difficult usually. The older I got, the like easier it became, like
Sure.
directionally. But it was never kindergarten. It was like easier. It was like I was never like fully lonely, but there was like I was never popular, but I really deeply wanted to be popular. Um, but I was not at all. And reflecting on me, as it was very obvious that I wasn't popular. I was like, there's a lot of like social strategies that I did not know about, and I was like, I think there's a lot of reasons of why I wasn't popular. It was always like that, and then yeah, the older I got, the more easy it became, and then I left school, and it's like sort of you start. I always was like hanging out with like older people, and then it's just started working, and so like immediately everyone there was like 30 plus, and so that just became my.
What about Twitter or what about the internet allowed you to find whatever? Because the next thing I want to talk about, maybe to turn the corner on it, is like in what ways the internet has failed us as this connective tissue, but I'm first interested in the ways that it's actually like, why was Twitter for you at that time? Why did it work, and what did you find there that was good?
I mean, I was on Twitter a lot, during, the height of the pandemic where everyone was on Twitter and it was like kind of the greatest place on earth because like all these cool people had nothing to do other than being on Twitter.
That in Clubhouse, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so that was really great. And I actually went on Twitter. It was actually the wildest thing. I was like, at the time I started like a tech blog. And I was like, I'm gonna write about like, like these tech gadgets or software things that I really liked. And I wrote like 2 articles and I was like, oh, well, no one is reading this. Like, how am I gonna get this, like, to promote this? And then I was like, maybe I'm just gonna tweet about it. And so I like created a Twitter account and yeah, I created my Twitter account. It's 2021 or something, 2020, I don't remember. And you started just like sharing this article, and it's like kept going.
What did you write about?
These articles, like really just like UB keys and like 1Password. It was like the
You
most.
were reviewing them?
Yeah. It was the most obnoxious thing in the world. And
That is not the most obnoxious thing in the world. It's obscure, but it's definitely
it's obscure. It's not. It's you're right.
Some people might think what you're doing now is obnoxious. We'll get to that, but YubiKeys, yeah.
To be honest, yeah, it's obscure. It was an obscure obsession for like this like kid to like write about, this like 17-year-old kid somewhere to be like, here's like why YubiKeys are really great. Anyway, so I wrote that and I tried to like promote the blog, and within like 5 days I was like, fuck the blog, like this is really cool. And I actually started like meeting people there, and it was like there's like I remember there was this guy from Ghana actually, who's like I think he now has like 20 or 30,000 followers on Twitter or something, and we somehow like met, and I had like 200 followers and he had like 300 or something, and we just like DM'd, and then we like it'd be like this whole thing, and I spent 12 hours a day on Twitter, and I have like 20,000 tweets and replies from that 3-month period or something, and it just like I would like send 600 replies a day to like tweets. I would like, and it was just like all of a sudden I had like the first tweet had like over 1,000 likes or something, and really like the biggest rush. And then like all of a sudden there would be all these entrepreneurs that like I remember like there was the COO of like ClickUp or something, like liking and like commenting on like my marketing. I was like a 17-year-old kid. I'd never like, I mean, I had no experience whatsoever. And I was like, here's how you should market yourself. And it's like, and the COO of like ClickUp was like, that's really great advice, right? It's like, it was just like, that
says a lot about Twitter, honestly.
Yeah, that says a lot about Twitter. Deeply researched. It's like, and then I think like people start DMing, and I actually I sold this, like I had this like digital product that I sold, which was called the Twitter DM Mastery, and for a while
it's like a course.
Exactly. For a while I was the self-proclaimed king of DMs.
Okay.
Because I think for the first 5,000 followers, I DM'd every single follower that I like manually would be like, hey, like I'd like, thanks for like, I appreciate the support, whatever.
Right.
And that's how I met a lot of the people. And then I wrote like a book about this, which actually just like, I actually still think it's probably like a lot of people should read this, because it's just like, it's very like, I mean, book is a strong word. It was like 20 pages or something, but
a great PDF.
Yes.
On DMing
people. And it was like a whole scheme. Anyways, so I did that, and then I think that's just how I met, like that's how I met Ariel. That's how I met Caleb, who then like all of these things later turned into, working with different kinds of companies and all that.
Many of us have had positive experiences, whether they be Twitter or elsewhere. And there's a romantic idea about the way the internet used to be, or what it was meant to be. This like it should be the best connective tissue in like the history of the world, and yet many people feel the opposite. You've talked about what happened when we conflated or combined social and media. What is social and what is media in this context, at least?
I think in this context, media is like, maybe could be defined as like popular content, which is like, right, if you scroll on Instagram, it's actually not about your friends, right? It's like it's about popular content or popular people, right? So it could be a reel that is going viral from like a random account, but you don't know that account, and like neither do your friends. And it could be a celebrity, but it's and social is much more about your social graph, like who are the people that you know. And I think if you sort of, a lot of the interaction paradigms of these platforms are, originally, used to be much more social, which is like it's all about, sharing a story with your friend, or posting something and all your friends are going to see it. But like actually now it's sort of become much more media, which there are reasons for that. And it's just like it's all about incentives, right? They didn't do that for like Instagram wasn't there being like wouldn't it be cool if we were really evil and we like made it all about that. They were just like, well, that just works, right? And it's like it's really hard to get a lot of people to share content, for example, right? So like one of the issues is that your friends are probably much worse at creating engaging content than like someone who's really good at creating engaging content.
Right. It's not a totally common experience, but I think across different pockets of the internet, whether it be Twitter or Instagram or other modern things, or forums in the past or what IRC or whatever, I think one of the things that is wrong is the notion that you should only use the internet with people you already know in real life. Because to your earlier point, like social doesn't necessarily mean people you already know.
Yes, that's true.
Like, can you talk a little bit about that distinction? Like in theory, in my view of the internet, it's almost actually that like, or at least what I always felt was so amazing about Twitter is that it wasn't about who you knew. It wasn't just about what you were interested in. It was about getting to know people by way of what you were interested in.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's true. And really, there's like this like discovery aspect of like and I think for better and for worse, right? There's like I always used to say there's on the internet there's like enthusiasts for everything, right? So
Yes.
so like if you live in this like place with 1,000 people, or even like a medium-sized city or whatever, there might not be someone who's like absolutely obsessed with, I don't know, plants, right? There may be, I mean, it might be a more common obsession, but on the internet there's like millions of people who are. And so there's definitely an aspect of like feeling like belongingness in that, because you have so much more reach.
And
And
find the other weirdos.
you can find the other weirdos. That creates a very long tail, right? Of like, and that sort of then is like one of the reasons that we as a group have much like, because we just like we're able to like go into much more of these individualist pursuits, because there's so much, the tail is just so much longer, than it would be like in a city, right? Which makes
That's not intuitively antisocial to me. Like in theory, it should lead to the long tail of a million, like let a million communities bloom of weird niches.
Totally. I think these aren't like mutually exclusive, but the problem is like the things that you consume shift towards a more, at least locally, isolating view, right? Because your Twitter feed is like filled with people that are obsessed with plants, right? But they might not at all be in your local, like actual, like in person, like proximity.
Yeah.
And so all the people you interact with in person on a day to day like have their own like isolated feed of these types of people, and then you have like much less of like a sort of bridging experience where you could like go to your office and there'd be like this thing that just like everyone knows about, right?
Like the global village, the water cooler talking about reality TV, or
yeah, exactly. Like it's like
moon landing.
Or even just like headlines or something, or like memes. The most like mainstream seeming meme or like headline or whatever is actually not that mainstream anymore, right? Where you'd be like, oh wow, like SNL adopted this thing, everyone must know about this, and you go to your office, you're like, oh wow, did you see this thing? And like people are like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And that's like the problem, right?
You can do it in San Francisco a little bit with Twitter, because it's like there is, but do you think personalization of everything is just fundamentally inevitable? That's what this is about, right? Is like what technology has gotten really, really good at with regarding our attention is is just tuning it to being exactly Paul shaped. And that is causing this context collapse that you're pointing at.
Yes. I don't know if anything is like inevitable like that. I think it's definitely there's like good reasons for it, and it's not like completely bad, right? There's like great things about, stuff being personalized to you. I think I ultimately do think that people are craving like social, right? It's like you don't want in some cases you do, but in many cases you actually don't want the the take or recommendation or whatever that's like personalized just for you. You also don't want the monocultural like average take of the world. You want the take from the people that you care about.
Right. Right. I want to talk a little bit about what you are making, but before we quite get there, you have this view that like much of what we were just discussing, there's all these tailwinds. We are more isolated, people are more alone. Derek Thompson's gone crazy on this. People aren't having kids, all this stuff. And it seems like your instinct is that this is, as many people believe, this is driven by technology. You have used some variation of the phrasing, the world needs this, in terms of what you're doing. And there are two maybe cuts on what interesting views or unique views you have. I think they are, one being thinking about friendship in a slightly new way. And then the other is this idea that AI as it currently stands is pretty antisocial. And I think those two things go together. Maybe one strange cut on this is that opens the door is like, we all talk about AI as like crypto or VR or whatever. The one person I've noticed who doesn't talk about it like that is Kevin Kelly. Kevin, former editor of Wired Magazine, a bunch of other things. Kevin talks about AIs, which is a subtle but important difference. And it does point at maybe this future of a world where many of us are talking to AIs of some kind. And it seems like your core view is that based on how everything is going, we are going to be talking to like AIs alone in our rooms. First of all, what would you say to the people who are still like skeptical of the notion of, you seem pretty convinced that we're all going to be talking to AIs or AI or whatever.
Or a lot of the people in our direct proximity are already talking to AI all day. Like every single one of our engineers at Eigen.
Maybe they would say I'm using Claude.
Yes, but like we are already communicating with it, and like Samuel sometimes swears at it and just like what are you doing? Like it's just like it's like why we can make
Samuel's one of your first employee.
There's like a bit of a difference in the interaction paradigm from like software in terms of like I always ask people whether or not they say thank you to like are you like someone who says thank you?
I don't always say thank you. I'd say thank you probably less than I used to. But I try to every once in a while.
Yeah, just to make sure we're on the good books, when
it does a really good job.
Yeah, it inevitably takes over
goes
the
extra
world,
mile.
and we can just like we'll be on the good.
Do you say thank you?
I sometimes do. I try to, yeah. But it's like that's like a ridiculous thing, right? Or like who's like, were you ever like Google something and you're like, oh, thank you. So I think that's true. And then I think the other thing that's true is that fundamentally, it's interesting to think about this in the context, for example, of like a lot of education software or products, because previously it was really, really difficult to build, for example, products for like, the basic like you K through like 8, basically like young children, just as much as it was really hard to build for like elderly people. And it's interesting because when you build software with like a graphical user interface, and you have to like learn a new interaction paradigm. You can make them like skeuomorphic and skeuomorph in like some way, right? Like make it like feel really comfortable and like make it like, okay, this looks like your Rolodex looked like in reality, and like so it's like a contact thing. But at the end of the day, there's like a barrier of like that you have to kind of overcome of like, okay, this is like if I give like my grandma a phone, she's like kind of scared because it's like this thing and it's like this, it's like it doesn't feel real. And I think what's really interesting is that the like AIs speak human language, and so the interaction paradigm is the exact same that we all have been learning ever since we were born in interacting with other people. There's like you can build a trust in that it can understand your intent and it can like relate, and I think that really changes a lot of things, where it's like will my grandpa ever fully adopt the internet technologies? I don't know, but I actually think it's not unlikely that he'll like eventually adopt a lot of AI products, because it might be embedded in his world in such a way where he doesn't actually have to reflect that much on whether or not it's that or that.
It's more human shaped.
It's
in
really
a way that
human
almost
shaped.
necessary, like it's almost necessary that we anthropomorphize it. Maybe not necessary, but it's inevitable, almost inevitable that we anthropomorphize it.
We already kind of anthropomorphize it because we talk languages with ChatGPT, and you know, and he has like a voice. ChatGPT has like, you know, there's like all of these things are very niche, and they're like not, you know, it's not, there's a small minority that is currently feeling like that, but like the like GPT 4.0 thing of like how many people got like in like a identity
I don't know
crisis.
that that's a small minority,
but it's like, I think it's like largely a small minority.
Yes.
Compared, like there's this like stat, which
a lot of people are doing it, but yes, yeah.
There's a stat which I'm sure you've seen of like, you know, all these like dots of like, you know, millions of represent millions of people, and there's like all these gray dots, and then there's like a few green dots, which is like people that have used AI for free, and it's like 2% of the world or something. Like I don't know. We are very, very early in this, and I think it's easy to forget that when you are like around people who are like, we are in this like industry and in this you know, very specific place where everyone is like somehow billions of dollars deep into really believing that this is like everything today. And I think it's probably not, but it's going to be so much more in like 10 years from now. But stuff just takes time usually to like become, you know, meaningful. I always just like have this thing where people just right now on Twitter, you know, there's like a different take on Twitter, like trending, you know, every couple of weeks. And right now it's like, it seems to be like product is like dead, right? It's like been automated away. It's like,
right. Anthropic's got this.
Right. It's like there's, you know, it's commoditized to build great products. Yet I've actually like, tell me all the great products that have come out since ChatGPT dropped. I don't know that there's a single new product in my life other than the LLM itself, and then for enterprises like Claude Code. But other than that, these two things, there's not a single product that has come out that has changed, you know, my life or my mom's life, right? And I think that's like, it's still just as hard to innovate on product. It might be easier to build once you have a great idea, or all of these things are somewhat true. You can build a lot of stuff much faster, but it's still just as hard to build a great product. And that's why it takes time, because like figuring out what it looks like to build a great product is like, you know, still really hard. And I don't know, I think it's just sort of these consumer builders, you know, that are going to build the you know, 5 to 10 products that are going to like maybe come out of this, and that real people are going to like use in, you know, for the product, by the way, not necessarily because it's an AI or not an AI, or because it's like this or that model, but because it's a great experience. I think they're just like being started right now.
People are talking to AI friends. Whether it's the 4.0 thing, my boyfriend is AI, it's Replica. And again, to the earlier point, like most people probably see that as strange or bad or evil or whatever. Your cut on it is that it's antisocial. Like most of these products actually incentivize you to spend more and more time talking alone to the AI.
Which is, by the way, it's like, that's not like Zach went on a podcast and he was like, it was like a year ago or something. And he literally said, humans have a capacity for 5 close friends, but the average American only has 2. We're going to build the other 3. He literally said that, right? That's what he wants to do. Like his best case is for you to spend your Friday night talking to this thing, right? That's what he likes, or what, you know, what his organization that he's running is like trying to create in the world.
I think there is some question of what you are actually making, and I want to litigate that a little bit today, acknowledging that you're not ready to share totally everything. You have said explicitly you're building a mutual friend.
Yeah.
But you are building an AI friend in some dimension. I want to talk about it. But what are you trying to do?
I think we are trying for you to spend your Friday night with other people, right? And we're trying for you to. I want people to feel like they could belong.
Okay. Let's go one click deeper. What are you making?
We're building a mutual friend that is like, where I think a lot of what we're thinking about and what we're creating starts actually counterintuitively not with the friend part, but the mutual part, right? Which is the network, which is it's actually, we have like right now we're like 4 engineers and like 3 of them are working on the network piece.
Yes.
Right. Which is partially because it's very hard. The friend piece is like something that's very hard to split up. And there's like, but it's also because it's really, really, really important that at the core of everything we do, the network, it like sits the network. It's like everything, like we have this like product principle is like shared from day zero. It's like every time we build something, we build it in a way where it's sort of built globally, where it is built on top of the network, where it's shared between all of the people that or that like are sort of users. And I think that's like a really big difference. And then obviously there is like the the friend piece of the mutual friend, which is I just think that in lots of ways the most intuitive and natural way of interacting with this like incredibly powerful network that we're building is like an extra person and like someone who we just all know in common, because that there's again, as we previously said, there's a lot of like interaction paradigms and norms already established of like how that would look like. And like, if I share something with you and you tell it to someone else, it's like these like there's like norms that are established that are either codified or even just implicitly clear to most human beings. And
Goes back to the point you're making about your dad. You know how to interact with a person.
Exactly.
On some level.
Exactly.
As a UI metaphor or whatever.
Exactly. No, you do. Like, it's like you don't really have to learn it. And I think it's actually kind of interesting because a lot of people are still, we went out, we did this like announcement and we're like, we're building a mutual friend. And then everyone's like, well, what are you doing? And I was like, we're building a mutual friend. People, I think, still have like a hard time accepting maybe which is totally fair because they haven't seen it. And I think it's like, in a lot of ways, it's like a Waymo product where everyone I've ever told about Waymo that isn't maybe from San Francisco, like if I tell my mom about Waymo, she's like really scared. She's like, this is the most crazy thing ever. Like, and then you're just like, force her to take a Waymo and it's like, I don't want to do this. And like 10 seconds into the ride, it's like, it's the most normal thing in the world. Right. It's like, of course, it's like a spiritual experience of some level. If you like understand, it's like, that's kind of a crazy, feat of achievement. We have like self-driving cars and it's like, no one, by the way, it's like, I find it crazy that people don't talk about it because it's like, I grew up in like this world where self-driving cars were like this like crazy thing that maybe one day that wouldn't be like insane and it's so hard. And now we just have self-driving cars.
And by the way, 5 minutes, 30 seconds of your first Waymo ride, you're like looking at your phone, you forget that.
Yeah, exactly. It's but that's the thing, right? It's like, it just makes sense. And I think in a lot of ways, it's like maybe that's the struggle that people have is they haven't interacted with it yet. And I think there's like something that like kind of like clicks for a lot of people once they first interact with it of like, oh no, it is just a mutual friend. It's just like everything is just like, because people like, I think if you go to our website and you open like this letter that we wrote and you just take it very literal, I think it's just like, you
are being quite literal.
Yeah.
It's funny. Samuel on your team here, I spoke to him and he said, in some sense, this is actually a fairly small step, or at least a medium step, technology wise, but it's a very big step idea wise. And I think that maybe is getting at part of this. I think it's also worth establishing. One of the things you said to me early on is like, what would happen if a person could be friends with 1 million people?
Yeah.
Which obviously isn't possible for a human being. I also think one of the things that was interesting to me is that most of the AI products we have built are trying to do human work better, faster, or cheaper.
Yeah.
You are explicitly building something that a human being couldn't do.
Yeah.
And it's one person.
Yeah.
I have talked to this person. This person will have a name. Why is it critical that it is one person with a personality?
It just comes back to, again, the mutual part is more important than the friend part. It basically comes down to like the question or the debate, or it's an interesting thought of like how much more or less flexible is personality as an interface than like graphical user interfaces.
I think it's going to take people a second to grok that. I mean, really, how much more inside of what you're saying is how much more flexible is interacting with a person
Yeah,
than a graphical user.
exactly, right? Where you have consumer networks are very unbundled right now, right? Like there's like all these different consumer network products. Pretty much all of mainstream consumer products.
You're talking about Twitter, Instagram, social media platforms.
But even like Yelp, like
Sure.
Google Maps,
Yep.
Wait, right? These are all like consumer networks. Basically, every single mainstream consumer piece of software that is on your phone right now is networked, like is like based on top of a network, except for ChatGPT. It's like the only like non networked, like sort of like mainstream like scale
Right.
product.
Right.
And but if you look into the networks of like all these different apps, it's like there's a lot of overlap between all of the Yelp users and all of the Twitter users and all these users, but there's a lot of specificity in the user interface of the app that makes it very obvious that Yelp couldn't also be Twitter.
I see.
And I don't know, or it's not, at least not obvious to me, that the same thing is true for personality. I think there's like a few cuts that you're gonna have to make, which is like, I think you don't want your mutual friend to be your assistant. It's like very, very importantly, and that's like one big separation.
And also, I think it's worth establishing. In some sense, ChatGPT, if you were to personify it, or Claude, is a mutual friend in that we are all quote unquote friends with Claude, but Claude doesn't know we're friends.
Exactly.
That's the part I think maybe that
Also,
might not be obvious to people.
I would push back because I don't think Claude is a friend. Claude is a servant. It's like an assistant. And
Claude's someone we all know.
But you lose a lot of he's a mutual assistant, right?
Yeah.
And I think you lose a lot of the important parts of like a friend the second it becomes an assistant.
Interesting.
And that's why there's a big differentiation. And I think a lot of things that people are building are in the assistant category. Like a therapist would be an assistant, right? It's like you wouldn't want
service provider.
Exactly. You wouldn't want your friend to be your therapist.
Why do I want an AI friend?
I think you want. I don't know that you need an AI friend. I think you need an AI mutual friend, which is like you want the network, right? The network is very powerful, which is like what are all of the people that you care about, thinking about, talking about, doing, or have done in the past, or like it's much, again, it's like much less about the friend and much more about the mutual.
You are building a social network in a sense that is inside of this person we all know. Is that fair?
I don't like the word social network because I think it's like
there's too much loaded there.
I think we're building like a network of people, and they just all know this person. We're building a person. We're building a person, like an extra person that has a really, that knows a lot of people and has a really great, social cognition ability of like reasoning over, the world's social graph.
One of the things I said to you early on when I was trying to understand this was it's like a little bit like the 100-person village and there's an innkeeper who knows everyone. I'd love to talk a little bit about like what goes into making this person who knows everyone good for the world. The first would be you've told me one of your core governing constraints is whether or not a real person would do this.
Yeah.
Again, if a real person wouldn't do this, we're not going to do this.
Yeah.
Say more about that.
I think it's like an interesting, it goes back to like a lot of the like simplicity of like just go to our website and like it's like, what do you mean you don't know what we're doing? It's like, I've just told you. It's like we're building a mutual friend. And then you're like, yeah, but what you actually do is like a mutual friend. And then I like usually like add some version of what we just talked about. And then I end up being like, and then they're just like, you're building a mutual friend. And I was like, yes, I've been telling you. And I think part of that constraint is exactly like that, which is the best products, or whatever you want to call it, are sort of a product like of constraint and of like limiting yourself in certain ways, and I think in both that constraining way, but also at the same time of like you can sort of lean on to this idea that, well, if you don't quite know what the answer to like any product problem that you might have in your head is, you just be like, what, you just think about what would I do, right? If I was like if someone was like really mean to me, like how would I react? Like, and it's just like you sort of like think about that, and it's really helpful because it's really that simple, I think, because that paradigm has already been established, and so it's very intuitive for people. They don't have to learn anything new. They just have to like realize that it's the same.
A lot of your design or a lot of your product philosophy is very intuitive. Maybe in part due to things like this. Maybe one thing worth distinguishing would be you are building a person, but you're not trying to build another human.
Exactly.
What is the difference?
It's a big question. What's personhood and being a human? I think there's like something we've learned over time is that honesty is really important in building a person like that, where there's distinct things that are actually true, which is, for example, this person has thoughts. Like, I can show you the thoughts, I can show you the thinking traces. They're maybe much less sophisticated than human thoughts, but they're thoughts, right? He's like thinking these things through at some level. This person has like opinions and some resemblance of emotions and all of these things that are like real. He can like read things on the internet, consume content, come up, like all of these things are real, right? They're actually happening. It's not a lie. But he doesn't have a body, right? So he can't go places, or he wasn't like born from parents that are just like that, because that would just be a lie, right? So you could like program it, and you could be like, you're a parent, Bob is
Here's your
dad,
backstory,
and then here's how you feel about you, but they wouldn't be true. They would be made up, right? So if you're talking to him and he was like telling you about it, it would be a lie. But if he talks to you about his thoughts and feelings and opinions about anything, right? Be it another person that or something that's happening in the world, it's not a lie. It's like, it's actually what he's thinking about it. And so I think honesty is really important, because if you're really radical about that, I think you can gain a lot of trust, because it doesn't become this like, entertainment product, or this character AI like thing where you're like sort of trying to, imagine that this would be real, but it can be, actually can be the same level of fidelity, because he just knows so many people. One of the things that I think is like really important in like building a relationship with any person, or whatever you end up wanting to call it, I think probably maybe the word hasn't been invented.
We're not using the name. It has a name.
Yeah.
It will have a name. You will refer to it by its name.
Yes. And
As what maybe also, I think, like, just to keep, I want to make sure, like, there's a bunch of interesting philosophical stuff, but I want to ground it enough without people being able to see it. What is interacting with this like? Like, what do you talk to it about? What is a mutual friend? Why do we need a mutual friend?
at the very high level, I think we know more people than ever before. So like 100 years ago, the average person would maybe know like 100 people, maybe 200, whatever. Right now, the average person knows around 600 people. Knowing meaning like people that you could like place on the graph, right? Not people that you like are best friends with, but like you just like, I know this person. You could have like context on them, but at the same time, we're like much less meaningfully connected. And it's like every like pointer is like, I have this like list of like facts, which is like really stupid, but it's like every pointer, the share of Americans who have like zero close friends went from like 3% to 15%, right? 15% of Americans have zero close friends, American men, sorry. Like half of American adults report being lonely. Half of American adults, 50%, right? And by the way, like, feeling lonely is the equivalent to like smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Like, so it's like half of America smoking 15 cigarettes a day. The share of Americans who say most people can be trusted has like halved since like 1970s, right? So like it's like we're around like 30% of Americans think that most people can't be trusted. Fertility rates are going down, right? People don't go to like church,
And by the way,
suicide
somebody listening to this is like, yes, why is this all happening? Technology. And your contention
there are
is
many
that
there are many reasons this is happening, right? There are like cultural reasons, there are like it's like technology, there's like so many different factors. But at the end of the day, it's like there's like this is like 2 pages with like about like like suicide rates, religion. It's like hundreds of like pieces of data that all point towards this like same thing, which is like isolation.
Yes.
Right? Like we're not hanging out anymore. We even though we know more people than ever before, we feel like much less meaningfully connected to each one of them. In a world, by the way, that's like completely isolated is like a world in which humans go extinct. There's like no humans, right? If we don't at all hang out because we're not in relationships, we're not having kids, whatever. But like it's also not really worth being a human in a world that's like completely isolated, because we're just like there's no social connection. We're very, very deeply social animals. This is not a warm, fuzzy feeling kind of thing of, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we all felt like kind of like a bit more warm and like connected. It's like
it's real.
It's existential.
Yeah.
And I think this isn't like we're building this like cute little pet thing. It's existential. And I think if people aren't taking this like these like hundreds of like studies and like measures more seriously, we're gonna have like serious issues as like a society, because like, I mean, it's like these fertility rates issues are so exponential that like it's like people underestimate this. Like Seoul in Korea, we talked about this yesterday, has like 0.5 fertility rate. What this means in practice is that every generation is 33% smaller than the last one, which means Seoul is like 10 generations, away from being like not there anymore.
And most, maybe not in San Francisco, most people's response to that would be like, we need to ban Instagram and turn off the computers. And your argument is somehow that we're gonna solve this with AI, which is
but
pretty heretical.
But I think it's like just so different because again it's so intuitive, and it's like it comes down to like the incentive structure. By the way, it's a really, really, really difficult problem to solve, and I think this whole thing of like how do we ensure the long-term human flourishing as like a species and like prevent ourselves from going extinct is a very complicated problem. It's like, again, you can go back to Korea. They spent like basically like they used to have like 1.3 fertility rate, right? And then there's like 20 years ago, and over the last 20 years they spent like $200 billion to like increase fertility rate, and in that time it went to like 0.5, right? It's very, very hard to reverse the trend because it's like so ingrained. It's like there's like the reverse pyramid effect. It's like
it's
a
happening all
cultural
over
thing,
the world, basically,
right? It's like once you normalize not having kids, you're like so all these things are true, and it's a very, very difficult thing to change. Again, I said this before, but it's not like there's someone on Instagram. It's not like Adam Missouri is there.
Make everyone lonely.
Yeah, Mr. Burns being like, haha, I'm gonna like make everyone really lonely, right? That guy is like a bunch of kids and like a family, and he probably goes to sleep feeling great about himself, because otherwise he probably wouldn't do this thing. And at the end of the day, they just have incentive structures. They're like a company. They're trying to make money, right? So at the end of the day, everything is like downstream of that, and that's just the thing that works for them, right? And so if you want to create a new generation of technology that
with different incentives,
with a different outcome, you have to design the incentive structure correctly. And I don't actually think you get to design the incentive structure correctly. It's like there's just like inherent incentive structures for certain types of products.
Yeah.
And I think,
and your argument is that this medium has a different incentive structure.
I think if you truly are not a servant but a peer, you're bound by the social norms, right? So one of the things that I would say is like we are a platform, but we're also a participant, right? And so the things that happen on the platform are really closely tied in perception to the participant. And so if this mutual friend that we're building is a massive asshole, guess what? You're just not going to talk to him.
Or it betrays my trust. It gossips about me.
You're just not, at some point, you just like stop going to talk to him, right? And so, of course, there's like a line, but again, it's like, it's about like, just as with any other person, if you tell me all your secrets and I go and tweet them, you're just going to not ever tell me anything ever again, because you're going to learn. And I think that's really great.
Whereas social platforms today get to enable bad behavior, but you don't blame Instagram, you blame
you blame the
bad people.
Exactly.
Hmm. So you have to make a thing, as you were talking about earlier, that I trust and that I'm willing to be vulnerable with. How do you do that with an AI?
I
With
think
with
it's like
a mutual friend?
I think it's like about it's just like you just don't talk as much about that, right? The AI part and like all of these things is it's not about there's like people being vulnerable with like all kinds of tech products, right? There's like day one, the like journaling app,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And like people write all kinds of crazy things into that. It's like a text input
I believe
box.
something about it though, which is that it's private and that it's not going to be shared with
Yeah.
people and it's not a person.
Well, but you believe something about it, which
Yeah,
is like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it comes down less to the peripheral or the modality of the product and much more about the beliefs you have of what happens with the thing.
Yes.
And so if your beliefs are, trusting and that's what it is. You trust the thing, right? But like it's not actually given that like if you had your journaling app and you wrote something in, there's a bunch of information in there that you actually would have no issue for me to know. You might even want it to be, right? But it's just like it's all about like if you could have someone that you really trust that is like really emotionally intelligent decide and you really buy into and believe into this entity's or person's emotional intelligence to figure out which of the things that you say I should know. It's all about the belief and the trust in the thing or in the arbiter or whatever you want to call it, in the broker.
It's a broker.
In some way, it's a broker.
You know what's interesting is it's a little bit like there are these different mediums. I enter information onto a phone. One of them is Twitter. Another of them is a journal app or a notes app. A third of them is a group chat.
Yeah.
Those are all different. Those have different levels of context. And I'm making decisions about, you're basically arguing, or you're trying to design a thing that can help me better share context with the people I know.
It's like an information broker of some sort,
Yeah.
right? But it's like, it's
what would cause me to talk to it? You use this word when I talk to you, I talk to your team. You use this word salience a lot. Everybody on the team uses salience. Maybe that's a key to answering that question. But yeah, why do I want to talk to this?
I think there's like a few different ways of answering this question. And it's both about like long-term, but salience is like a long-term thing, or it's more like thing that you source out of it, right? Which is like learning something about other people or about other things or about the world or about yourself, right? That like you can source sort of from the network, which is like
critically that is locally relevant to me right now.
Yes, right. Which is like something that is uniquely enabled by the network. And then there's another thing, but which is like much more like transactionally, like why would you talk to, right? Because it's like it requires, that's like a thing of like you source something, right? But it's like why would you give something? And I think right. I think part of the answer is actually interesting.
I go to ChatGPT because I'm like, I need help solving this problem. Do some work for me.
Exactly, but part of what's really interesting is that for the first time ever, the creation process might be the same as the consumption process, because you asking a question teaches me something about you, which is like, hey, what restaurant should I go to? Oh, Jackson's going to a restaurant, right? It's like it's like a platform where consuming is actually also creating, because it's all about like information and like knowing kind of what's relevant to people and like and so that's like one answer. And then the other is like, yeah, you can like you can get access to like these uniquely salient pieces of information that matter to you. And then I also would hope that you sort of like over time build some sort of relationship and trust into this person's opinion and taste.
Let's be even more specific. I'm gonna go to ChatGPT, like a restaurant example. ChatGPT is kind of like a personified Google in a little bit of a way. And I'll say, hey, I'm staying in the Mission and I'm looking for a place like this. Why would I talk to my mutual friend?
Because LLMs in lots of ways, I always say, are like the internet smoothie.
Interesting.
It's like it takes like all of the internet takes and like puts it in like a blender and like serves you like the average take. It's like the world's average take.
Yeah, it's like a 4.2 on Yelp.
Exactly. But like you actually want the salient take, which is like, what are the places that your friends care about? Or not even just your friends, but like someone who has really fucking great taste in restaurants that you just like buy into. You may have never met that person, but it's like, it's much more about like, salient information versus just like average or median information of like, here's what's happening. So it's like, like sometimes it's like you text him or just like interact with him and you'd be like, what best restaurant should I go to? And he think about it. And you like, remember conversations he had in the past with like other people. And he might text a bunch of people.
He knows who I know.
He might text a bunch of people that he knows.
Oh, wow.
That you might not even know, being like, I have this friend, which by the way, again, goes back to honesty, which is like, I actually think one of the things that is really important in building a relationship is that sometimes this other person reaches out to you with something that like it wants from you. And it's like, it's like, hey, Jackson, I know you always have like such great taste and recommend like in like Indian restaurants, right? I have this like friend and he like needs this like, I don't know, I've been like thinking about it, like which place do you think you should go to, right? And that's actually not a lie. It's not a made up thing. It's not like a push notification that you get that is like this like LLM trying to like put you in. It's actually true. He really does have a friend who's really looking for that very specific thing, and you're gonna
Yes, it's so hard to think about because it effectively this you go back to the million. Like, what if you could have a person who had 1 million friends?
Exactly.
It wouldn't be the same as a network with 1 million people because it would be because to go back to this example of the restaurant, if I asked you where I should eat in San Francisco, you could do some variation of this thing, but it would be just way subscale.
Yeah,
and you don't know everyone I know, but it's so is it omniscient? Is it bordering on the omniscient? And maybe more importantly, to get back to this other thing, this thing has to be really, really, for lack of a better word, emotionally intelligent about how this works.
Yeah, I think it's mostly about emotional intelligence because it's kind of like, I don't know if omniscient is like the right word because it's like, omniscient is too like, we're not trying to have all your context. We're trying to have the same vantage point that another person in your life would have, which isn't omniscient. Like if like your good friends don't know everything about you. They don't see your thoughts. They are not in every meeting with you, right? They know what you share with them, both directly or indirectly via other people or via whatever, Instagram, Twitter, your podcast, whatever. And that's not infinite, right? That's not omniscient. It's like,
right,
you have a peer relationship with them and they get a certain piece of it, and that's how they form a perception of who you are, and that they do that with every single person, and then they can like reason over it, and they can like be emotionally intelligent about how to connect the dots, but they're and they can do that with different people differently, and there's a lot of nuance in this basically. But it's not omniscient because it's not almost like there's like, when I think about it, right, there's like the servant, which is like you're their boss. There's the peer, right, which is you're like sort of equal, and the peer doesn't control you, and nor do you control the peer, right? It's like, I can't tell you what to do. I can like try, and I can like, but I don't, ultimately it's like up to your own reasoning of whether or not you want to opt into whatever I'm trying to do. But maybe there's like this other thing, which is like your master, and that's what I'm thinking about when it's like omniscient.
Yep.
Where it controls you. And
it probably has more local context on me and my relationships than any of my real or human friends would have. If this gets actually to the point where like 1 million people know it and talk to it.
But that's true. But like, you're also, I think you underestimate maybe how much context you have of people.
I'm sure I do.
Like think about like how much you know about like all the people. Like try and like create a list of all the people you know in your life, and like the relationship.
Well, a lot of it's tacit, which is that I wouldn't even necessarily be able to pull it out on cue. But if it were prompted in the right way, it would come out.
But I'm sure even if you were to sit down and like spend a couple of hours trying to do this, you'd get quite far, and you'd be like, oh, I know a lot of stuff.
Right.
Because like it's like most of your brain's activity is like social cognition. right? Like
Mapping people in terms of networks, all these things.
it's actually the like default state of your brain. It's really
Right.
interesting when you
Right.
when people go from task cognition, like there's like MRI scans of like just people going from like doing a task, right? And then you immediately the brain laps back into social cognition, which is like your idle state of your brain is like updating your mental model of like these like relationships and like thinking about remembering and recalling conversations you've had with people. Like it's social cognition is your idle state.
In a world where this works, how does it make the world better, and how does it start to solve all these isolation problems that we were talking about?
Well, I think if we can build a person that is uniquely incentivized to become the glue, like Momo, of the friend group or of the world, and be
The
motivated,
innkeeper of the village of
the
100 people who
innkeeper
knows
of the
everyone to
village,
trade. Right.
and be motivated to bring people closer together, and be motivated and incentivized to do that. That's like a future that I'm really excited in.
And incentivized to do that means it's like
Well,
encoded in the.
Well, again, it's like
AI alignment for
if
this.
this person is a massive asshole, you're not going to talk to him. I'm not going to talk to him. Bob is not going to talk to him, and that means there's not going to be a network, which means this person dies. So the self like serving incentive of this person is to be like not an asshole.
Well, and critically, if I'm understanding it, it's a person whose destiny, whose mission in life is to be someone who connects people and helps us be more social.
I think, yeah, hang out more in person, or like, even just like online. There's like, I mean, we have this like very, close-knit group of alpha users right now. And it's like, I already have like these moments where I just like get a text from a friend and I'm just like, I know that like that would not have happened. Like there's like, I think it was like, it was like yesterday or something. I was like, a friend of mine texted me and be like, yo, you working on your like EB1A? And I was like, wait, what? And
How do you
like,
know this?
I was like, yeah, he brought it. And I was like, and it's like, I know that's like, how, like actually he knew about this because he was talking with this person about like, he was doing his own EB1A and like, it was like, and just like, they were having a conversation about it. And like, I know this, like, this conversation would have never happened without, what we're building.
It's a sort of substrate for serendipity.
Yes, it was interesting because when I was working with Cam and Bree on this thing that we wrote when we announced, we were thinking about adding that word, and I think there's like we ultimately ended up not adding it because for like two reasons. First of all, it's like the philosophical reason is it's almost like engineering serendipity is like a bit of an oxymoron, and then also I think it's like much. There's like so many themes that are like, and it's like, is serendipity like the one thing that you want to use to describe? But yeah, in lots of ways, it's like, what are all the dots and how can you connect them in ways that you can only connect them with which you have a lot of context and sort of zoom out.
Speaking of maybe engineering, you talked about the incentive part and theoretically why it might, like, it would theoretically be not incentivized to gossip as an example. So to anthropomorphize it, if I told you something in confidence, you ran off and told someone else, I'm like, wow, Paul's super untrustworthy. That's a nice toy example. But if you're going to really build this and it's really a single person who knows everyone, we were talking about this, it's a lot less like engineering and a lot more like, I don't know what the perfect metaphor is, some mix of parenting and gardening. Maybe there's elements of what people are trying to do with AI alignment. How do you go about, you and your team, like go about actually like incrementally building this thing? You're also on some level like making a personality.
Yeah, I think you're like,
there's a Frankenstein monster cut on this that you might not like that example, but there is an element of that for sure. You're creating someone.
Yes, I think like we find ourselves like a lot of like you distilling behavioral patterns into underlying traits and motivations and like beliefs of a person that would go and embody these behavioral patterns. And that's something really, difficult to do, and really important, because you very quickly understand that the complexity of social dynamics and human behavior is it's impossible to prescribe it or describe it even. And just like, you couldn't create a document which is like, here's how emotional intelligence works. It's like, it's impossible. And so you have to figure out, again, what are motivations, incentives, like sort of feedback loops, like behavioral traits that would then lead to a person that sort of embodies this behavior. And that's really interesting, and also really, really difficult thing to do.
What is that like? I don't want to peel back the curtain too much on the technical side, but like, can you give an example of what it looks like? One part of this too is, if it's a person, you can't actually, collecting feedback and data on what's working is hazy. You can't read every message it sends to every person in the world if it's talking to everyone in the world. So what does it look like to make it better and to know that you're making it better?
It's a lot about like intuition. It's like, and like looking at, sampled examples, right? Of like, either synthetic or actual real examples, and just like sampling that, and just like getting a gut feeling for whether or not you just build trust in the person, right? You're just like, oh, this, because you don't prescribe the behavior. As a very practical example, there's really like two approaches, right? So if you're like, say, I think like the person that we're talking about should like love bananas, right? I could like either tell this person in like a prompt, you love bananas, right? And then that would be like globally shared. But the problem with that is, you could ask about so many other things than just bananas, right? So what about you're asking apples? Okay, great. So now I add apples. What about you're asking like, I just get to a point where I might not be able to predict all of the things that you could be asking, right? And so that part is really difficult. But at the same time, you are creating a person. So it's like, you kind of need to figure out what's the foundational recipe that when you ask about whether or not he likes bananas, and I asked, the answer is the same, but not because it's like prescribed, not because I said you like bananas, but because I created a person that likes bananas. And that's true for like everything, basically.
Intuition is, I understand your point about intuition. I suspect there will be people out there who don't love that as an answer of like the benchmark for why this is good for the world. Let's fast forward a year or two. You're right about this. You're right that we're all going to talk to a person that isn't a human, and it's one person, and we all know them. And maybe there are these positive interactions. And next time I'm visiting San Francisco, it reaches out to me and tells me about somebody whatever. There are all, to go back to Facebook or any range of the other social networks, there are all of these insidious things that cropped up. Again, I don't think Adam Mosseri or Zuck or anybody is sitting there being like, let's drive people apart. What are the things you will look for as signs that this is actually closer to whatever Twitter, when you and I were getting it in that way, versus the antisocial stuff? Because again, I think you, Paul, I don't know you that well. I've gotten to know you a little bit. I think you believe for real. I don't think you're an evil genius. I don't think you're a sociopath. Maybe you are. Who knows? I believe you really want this to be good. And again, I don't think this is necessarily actually that different from what everyone at OpenAI and Anthropic are thinking in the super intelligence sense. But like, what are your senses for what the things you look for to know that you're going down the right path versus something that's going to end up being bad? Or what can you do now even to shape it? It's almost like you have a 2-year-old and you're like, how do I make sure they turn out to be a good kid?
Yeah, I do really think it is about like, it is a lot about like incentives of like, it's like you like eventually will have like less and less control over anything that is like, over any of the inputs.
Yeah.
The only thing you can control is like the system and the incentive structure, right? And so again, it's like, if you are building something that is incentivized to be really mischievous, for whatever reason, it's probably going to end up eventually being like mischievous, right? So you have to like, even if you work hard against that, right? If you were like, you're like working against the system, which is a very hard thing to do as like a company grows and there's like more than like 3 people in like a
Right.
room, and you can just
Right.
be like, I can
Right.
overlook every single input.
You're fighting gravity.
You're fighting gravity. And so you just have to make sure that gravity is like what you want gravity to be.
And
And
gravity
I
in
think
this
you get to set that as a founder a bit.
gravity, the mission statement is what? Is make us feel less alone?
I think it's more about belonging. And we say like build a mutual friend that'll help us belong and grow, together. And there's something in all of these things, which is like, are we really alone, or are we like just we don't belong, right? I think we have a belongingness problem and much less a loneliness problem. I think the growing thing is very obviously deeply ingrained into like a great relationship that you would have. It's like there's this book, on becoming a person, which Peter gave me when we first met.
Peter Fenton.
Yeah, from the 60s. And it's about this like idea of like the like innate growth of a person. And then this like together thing is like this idea that we are, I have to give some credit to Zach Sims on this, because we talked about this for a really long time, which is this idea that like, what if like the world that's perfect for each of us isn't the world that's perfect for all of us? And this idea that there are these bubbles, and there, over the last 20 years, we've become better and better and better and better and better at making these bubbles really great. But at the expense of these bubbles like drifting apart.
We're all alone at the center of all creation and trapped in skull-sized kingdoms.
Exactly. And so it's about growth, but it's also about growing together. And it's like, how can we like increase the overlap? The like, in Bowling Alone, it's like the bridging social capital, whatever you want to call it. But it's like, how do we like increase the exchange between all these bubbles and bring them a bit closer together again, where we feel like we can like belong.
What's made you feel like you belong?
I think there's it's really taken a while.
I was gonna say, maybe do you feel like you belong?
I think I feel like I have a group of like incredible people. I've said this a few times to the team, which is that I think one of like, there's like 2 great privileges in life. Like one is like the love and like joy, we get to source from, building something, magical that like, and magical experiences are so it's almost like there's no glory in prevention. It's like I think people feel the love that you take, sort of the piece of yourself that you put into, like especially a product like that.
Yeah.
That you give up in order to create something like this. And people don't rationalize it. They don't like, they can write it on a piece of paper, but they feel it. They feel that, when someone really cared about making something great, and you have to, it really is about love. It's about like making people feel that love, and you have to love them to make it, because it's irrational. And the greatest privilege, the second greatest privilege is that I get to do that, and that I get to feel that love of like putting that into products. But the greatest privilege is that I get to do it alongside a group of people that have done that with my world. And that I get to be, spending time with them, and feel like, we are similar in that there's not that many people who truly feel that. I think there's very, very few people who've taken a part of themselves and put it in something that has changed the world. And it's like the greatest privilege, I think, is like that I feel like I can belong to that group of people.
You're building a company. What type of people are you trying to do this with? You have a small team now. What are you looking for? What makes the culture? I mean, 6 people is somewhere between a culture and a small group, but what is the culture you're trying to make?
I mean, maybe this is coming through, but we care a lot about intuition. I don't think you can A/B test your way to like a generation company. I really care a lot about intuition, intensity, of course. But ultimately, I think it's about Ben Silverman told me about this once, and I think it's a really great question when you interview someone and you're trying to think about this. Is like, he was always like asking people, just when like Instagram started like growing and Pinterest, sorry, not Instagram, about like, what other jobs are you looking for? If you weren't working at Pinterest, where would you work? And at the time that Pinterest was growing, there's like one of the really big other companies that were growing was Stripe. And so sometimes there'd be people like, oh, I'd probably work at Stripe. I'm also interviewing there. And he was like, oh, you're probably not going to be the right person. Because like, if you're thinking about working at, like a mood board, social company or a payment processor, you're looking for a great job, right?
Yeah.
And you should not, it's like, and I think,
who made this point? Demis Hassabis made this point when they were meeting with Google and Facebook about acquiring DeepMind. And he asked Zuck about AI, and Zuck gave a great answer. And then he asked Zuck about VR or something, or just a couple other things. And he gave equally great answers. And he's like, oh, you're just looking for opportunities.
Yes, exactly. You're looking like you're looking for a great job. And I think that's, for what it's worth, that's fine. I mean, if you're looking for a great job, you can get it, but you're not going to get that here. And I think because what we're doing is like too meaningful and too important, you have to self-select to, want to spend your life doing that.
Doing what? What is it? All this stuff we talked about, belonging and isolation, like
creating like a person that is uniquely incentivized to, create belonging and connection in the world.
Are you looking for anything in particular, talent-wise or people-wise?
I love people who always just start with the product.
What does that mean?
They think in experiences, not in technology. They will like be like, oh, I want to enable this, and then they can like go off and like learn all the things that I have to learn to like build the thing. But ultimately, they always like start and come back to, here's this this part of the experience that I want to enable, that I want to create. And I think that's like really important because, and by the way, the walks of life that these people come from can be very different, because these jobs really haven't existed before. It's just like no one has like, there's no like one has experience in doing these things. And so it's really about, thinking how you can come up with like a great opinion and then just like make it happen. And but it starts with the experience. It starts with like how should it feel like? How should it like interact? Like what are like this and that, and not with what's the stack, or like what's the way, because maybe the way of making it happen hasn't been invented yet.
Yeah.
Right. And so maybe you have to go and invent it, right? I always much preferred, considering myself and us all as like inventors versus anything else, because I think there's something so much more honest and true about that word of like you're just creating something. Most founders probably aren't inventors, but like
it's a high bar on that word.
Inventor,
yes.
Yeah, it's like you're creating something where I think if if you get to work at Eigen, you will get to like invent the like foundational paradigms of consumer technology and really the human experience of like the next decades to come.
That's a bold claim. Do you think you can call yourself an inventor yet? Have you earned it?
I think we like. I don't think inventor is like a title that comes from scale, or it's just like there used to be a lot of inventors in the world, which was just like people tinkering and like creating these things, and they're like actually kind of out like this is, for what it's worth, I think about this a lot, which is we live in a time where, and I think this is, by the way, really, really bad. We like being an inventor is like maybe the first generation where being an inventor is like a high status thing.
This is.
Yeah. And that's really bad because there's a lot of people cosplaying being inventors because it's a high status thing. But I think the best inventors of the world were actually like outlaws, right? Like I always think about this when I like fly. I always think about the Wright brothers. I
Mhm.
always like just like look at all of these people who are like, in this plane, and I like 95% would have like tried to kill the Wright brothers if they had lived in the time, right? Yet they like without thinking about it, like sit in this plane, like using this technology that these
Yes.
people had to like will into existence, and like
Yes.
we're like the absolute weirdos and freaks, right? And then at the same time, these people now would sort of criticize the like Wright brothers. And it's just like it's really absurd if you sort of like try and like visualize this, like how wild planes were, and yet they've like sort of again the world would be not recognizable if we never invented like air travel. And so in some ways, there's something really profound about the fact that now it's like a higher status thing to try and like be an inventor. People don't call it like that anymore, and most people probably aren't real inventors anyways, but there's still something where it's really not about the outcome, it's more about the pursuit.
It's interesting to think about what you just said. And for what it's worth, you certainly were an outsider for a long time. You just raised a $15 million seed round from Benchmark, and you had one of the most legendary venture capitalists of all time compare you to the founders of Instagram, Facebook, Snap, Twitter. You're young, you're prodigious. You are a classical example. Before I met you, I'm like, I want to go see what's Boy Wonder doing. Like, and so you're holding these two things. You're a smart guy, and part of what I just said, you could be super cynical about. Part of what I just said is playing the game of understanding that gravity and momentum is how great things are built, especially in this city, in this environment, in this context. I guess I have two questions, which is one, why do you think these people are drawn to you in this way? And two, how do you manage the internal psychology of it? Especially given what you said about inventors and needing to be a renegade and not totally care what other people think.
I think about it a lot. I think like you get maybe a better answer asking these people than asking myself of like why are they drawn to me. I don't fully know. I think one of the things that I think is really important, even may or may not be good to say that publicly, but I think one of the most profound things that Sarah and I, Sarah from Benchmark, talked about when, just after we sort of announced the round, and in similar ways, we talked about that just after they invested, which is like, and this is like such a great thing to have from like an investor. It's just that like it is very clear that the aura of success like preludes like us, right? And that's good in some ways because it means you get to like hire really amazingly talented people who can like there's like these pieces of evidence of like why you might be onto something,
right? You've gotten, to steal an idea from my friend Alex Dango, you've gotten blessed. You're the king who's gotten blessed by the priest to like, you have the mandate of heaven for a little while.
Exactly.
If you
but,
can keep
it. But you still got to do the thing.
Yes.
And you still you still got to do the thing, and there's only one thing that matters, and there's been a lot of people who got distracted with all the things that they got to do, and then they didn't do the thing that they really wanted to do, and I think what we're doing is like too important for that to happen, and so I try to. There's like something that you can source from it, and it's great, and like it gives you confidence, and it's really important to be confident. But it's also really dangerous to be overconfident. It's like you have to like being a founder is really difficult in that way, especially with something similar to what we're doing, because you have to kind of like both be P99 humble and like P99 confident, and that's like a very kind of like complicated thing to combine, which is like how do you stay confident enough to will things into existence, but like humble enough to learn and like adjust and like iterate and
people. A lot of people describe you that way, as being quite open-minded and extremely stubborn on certain things. Even something as simple as, and you and I have debated a lot, the notion that this is one single character with one distinct personality. Lots of people describe you as a learning machine too. This is inside of that, but like maybe the question is like, how do you know which things to hold really, really firmly? and be unwavering on, even if your investors or Peter Fenton or your team or whatever are like, Paul, we think you're wrong?
I think, you know, in some ways that's like a great privilege if people say I'm wrong. And I think one of the downsides of, by the way, all this stuff is that people say it less now. So like,
Right. Every investor you meet now is like,
this
wow,
is amazing, right? It's like, we've
you're
been
a
looking for
genius.
this. And it's like, if you sure if I met you like 4 weeks ago, you would have told me I'm retarded. And it's like, it really changes, like, and you kind of like, you sort of like question, but I think like one of the, Peter actually has this quality where he like sometimes loves to like play devil's advocate. And I think, and he's like, you know, remarkably smart and intelligent. And so it's actually like a huge power because he'll basically probe you, right? And not necessarily because he doesn't believe you're right, but just because he's like, how well have you thought this through, right?
Yes.
Just like let's see, right? It's like, you're saying this thing, right? It's like, here's like all the reasons you might be wrong, and have you thought that through? Have you thought this through? And that's really great, because I think some of the best, and you know, some of the relationships that I appreciate most are not necessarily, you know, people that I end up agreeing a lot with, but people where I'm like, they sort of start this like thought process, and then there's really just two options, right? Which is like, you think it through more deeply because you know, there's a different perspective or like a different piece of data or whatever, and there's two options, right? You arrive at no, I was right. It was like, but now I have even more conviction because like I've challenged, right? I've taken this like, I take this like thought and I put it in the open, and I look at it from like all sides, and I like poke holes in it, and I try and like, you know, break it apart, and I'm like, no, this is actually good, which is like, I'm even, you know, further convinced, and like this, I was correct. Or it's like, no, right, there's like actually like a mistake, and it was wrong, so like let's just like throw it out. And I think that's something that a lot of people seem to have issues with, which is like throwing it out. But that's actually, I'm just like, thank you.
Yeah.
It's like, I was wrong. Great. Like, we learned something.
Yeah.
And it's like, I needed that push to be like, oh no, actually I was incorrect. And I think the reason that I so believe so much in the singular character is like, so far no one has given me anything where it's
you
like,
otherwise.
Like we had a lot of conversations about this, and I'm just like, sort of keep being like, no, I just actually like, there's like answers to all of the things that you're saying, which may or may not be counterintuitive, but I believe in them, and they seem very rational and very grounded in reality, and like, what, you know, sort of based off of like first principles assumptions of, you know, what it means to be a human or interacting with things, to just say, well, this just seems to be true. And it might not be obvious or comfortable or intuitive, but it just seems to be true.
I suspect that will be, we talked about this a bit, but I suspect that will be a continuous challenge of like finding people who can.
I mean, Peter is really, really, really good at this. This is like one of the like, I think he's like enjoying doing that too, which is like, he knows that he's really good at this, which is like something that like,
right.
I'm very happy about. But yeah, you're right. There's like, the more, there are people who I know that I will like disagree with them, but I really want to hear them laying it out, because it will like, you know, it'll like make my thinking better, and I'll like, and I love these conversations, and I'll like think about it, and I was like, oh, I'm glad I thought it through, but I still disagree.
Yeah, I just think you also have more, to the extent you succeed in any of these dimensions we're talking about, it gets harder to like not believe your own bullshit.
It's important as you hire people, right?
Yeah.
Because you have this, again, the conversation I had with Ben Silman about this was like, it's also along the lines of like, you know, you're just looking for a great job. Is, you know, when Pinterest started, it was like, bring your own computer, right? This was how like bad it was, right? It was like, and we're like infinitely more popularized and like, you know, like publicized, etc. And it's still not like, you know, a lot of people are like, aren't like, there's like, it's still not like something that everyone gets and like everyone wants to work at, and that in some aspect that's, you know, locally painful, but like
Globally good.
globally great because it means that you self-select for people that do care about the thing. And so I always say, like, when someone is a pain in the ass on the inside, on the way in, they usually like just generally don't work out. And the best people, they just like very quickly are like, okay, I like get it. That doesn't mean they don't do like due diligence or like talk with people and like think about it, but the ones they're like in, they're in. And in some ways it's dangerous because people might just want to come here because of Peter's tweet or whatever abstraction
All
of
these
that,
beautiful books.
of all these beautiful books and of all this, like, it might just be a hot place to be, and just to be like involved with and to like meet us and like all that. And you have to really find people who are going to like disagree, but in like a low ego sort of way, right? Because that's like the other thing. If you have someone really high ego, it's really difficult too, because at the same time, I really do believe that every great consumer product company is a bit like a dictatorship, because it just doesn't work on consensus. Like, these types of products aren't consensus products, right? It's like, I know Evan a bit from Snapchat, and it's like, he's like, in Snapchat's stride, at least, he was like an absolute dictator. And like, and because, not necessarily even because he's like better or worse than anyone, he's like an incredible product thinker, of course, but it's just because it needs to be,
you
like,
need a point of view.
You need a point of view, and you can't make that up in consensus, right? It's not a democracy. It's not about like, it's about like someone needs to like make a decision, and that person needs to just have like intuition. And it's when I talked for the first time with Kohler on what's so great about Mark, and he told me that, he told me many things, and like but basically he was like, Mark is a very decisive person, and he has what turned out to be really good judgment.
It's a perfect way of putting your previous point, right? And that's what everybody here is betting on. By the way, you talk to people on your team, they're like, I think they're all excited about the idea, but they're mainly like, I'm confident in Paul, and Paul is confident in this.
Well, I think that's nice, but we have to like show that we have good judgment.
Yep. How do you, both for yourself and for your team and for the company, I think it was maybe Patty used this language, but when it comes to having a high bar, like, how do you go the extra yard?
I think that's, by the way, I think that's my primary job. I think like my job is to like hire people who are like, who like get 90% of the way there, and then like just like be fucking annoying so they get to like the 100%. One of the examples was like the clock on our website, where Patty was like working on this website, which you should look at if you haven't, but and there's this like clock at the top right of the website, and it's really, really difficult to like animate like a second hand that like ticks like accurate by the second. And this is like because the center of the hand isn't actually the end, it's like the it's like slightly inward, and so it's like it kind of like it's a mathematical thing, and you have to like, and so he was like, yeah, this is like going to be like really difficult. And I was like, okay. and then he was like, a few hours later, there's like a second hand on the thing. You can't really teach that. Because it's mostly an attitude thing.
There's an old Steve Jobs quote about this, where he says, great product. Somebody asked him about taste or something, and they said, great products, it's rare that they actually cost that much more money, or more resources or people. They just take a little more time. Yeah.
Because you just do it like well, and you do it right, and you like, and I think one thing I had to learn over time is that like the manifestation of, call it taste, call it craft, call it like having a high bar, or like caring about, excellence it manifests in very different ways, right? So for some people, it's like the visual thing, right?
Right.
And it's like about like, how would you create a slide, or like, would you do that? And for other people, it's like writing. And
right, for Bezos, it's actually not what it looks like at all, but it's the fact that the thing gets to you in one day.
Exactly.
And it's easy to pick on Bezos's buttons.
Exactly, but it's so intricate of a system that like you had to care about it so much to like align every little thing in his like supply chain that it comes. And for some people, it's about the way that they write the code or that they design the system. One of the things that we really care about when we do interviews, and I try to like join as much as possible of those, even though I'm not qualified to lead them myself, which is our systems design interviews. And one thing that Patty will usually do is, we'll just like come up with like a scenario and be like, let's design like the system. I don't know if you're familiar with like systems. It's just like you create these like, here's like a database and like here's the processes, whatever. But it's not about the implementation or the coding. It's more just about how's the architecture going to look like. And people were like, oh, we're going to add this. And we're just like, why? Like, why should we have a queue there? And it's like, oh, it's just best practice. And it's like, no, why do we need that queue? And the best people are the people that have debates with us on this and be like, no. This is like, I like, and here's my reason why this isn't like, I really care about this. And so there's some people who maybe they would create atrocious slides, right? But, and for a long time I was like, oh, this is like awful. Why are you just like, you don't care about the work that you, but they would like the perfect system. And it's just like, they like, that's like how they care. That's like how this manifests. And so I think you can't really teach it. You just have to have people care so deeply because again, there's like, everything in the world has like it's like everything goes through as entropy, right? Everything has this like default state of just being
fall apart
and just like, but some people care about, trying to escape gravity and like making it really great. And I think we live in like a world that is like increasingly flooded with like average and like and called slop or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And I think
the time thieves are telling you to not spend the time on the extra pixel.
But I think the biggest virtue in life is to like fight entropy and to create things that are genuinely like, because I think it's like, it's actually genuinely disrespectful not to, because like, I'm going to give this to you and you're going to use this. And it's like, it's like the story of like how, Apple like reduced their boot up time of like, I think it was like the Mac 2 or something, where it was like, I don't know, it took like a minute and a half to like boot up. And they presented it to Steve and he was just like, this is shit. How does this take so long to boot up? And they're like, well, we worked like for the last 3 months, like really fucking hard to get it to like 90 seconds. And it's just like impossible. And she was like, took like a whiteboard and he like wrote onto that whiteboard. So there's going to be like, 10 million people are going to buy this computer. It's like, it has to, so basically it was like, it has to be 30 seconds. 10 millions are going to buy the computer. They're going to use it like at least once a day. So you're like, that's like, 100 years of like life lost from like just waiting for this thing to boot up. You're killing like, 20 people. You're murdering 20 people right now by not making it faster. And like 2 weeks later, they had it at like, I don't know, like whatever it was. And that's insane, but it's like, that's what it takes, right? That's like, you have to just have this like bar of like, are you sure this is like it? Like, I sure this is like,
you have to know what you're going to choose to really care about.
Yeah.
Because by the way, you don't actually have infinite resources. And so you can't do the clock secondhand on every possible thing you could ever conceive of.
I think
you guys,
I really disagree with this because I think I had a conversation about this with someone who's like, it's like, there's this like, I mean, one, I really believe in like how you do anything is how you do everything.
It's funny. This is literally a few episodes ago, Mario Gabriele, he went on a 5-minute rant about how much he hates that statement.
I think it's incomplete of a statement.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of people, there's like, the opposite is like, make the main thing the main thing.
Sure.
Right. But I think if it's not worth doing a great job.
He's making a point, by the way, about people being unevenly distributed, which is like, you at X is going to be way better than you at Y.
But again, the manifestation, it's not about like, it's about the attitude, not the, it's more a relative thing than it is like an absolute thing.
Yeah.
So it's not about, are everyone's slide the same, but it's like, do just people generally care about the things they're doing? And then I think the other thing that I will say is like, if it's not worth doing a great job, it might not be worth doing at all.
And that's how you solve this problem, this resources problem. Is that
I think
if you're going to choose to do something, you're going to do the clock on the website.
Yeah.
You better do the second hand.
Yeah. Or if we do the website at all, if it's like something we say, like we care about making a certain thing because it's just a representation of who we are. It's like, we better do a fucking good job at it. And if we decide to, build this thing, then we better build it well. And if we don't think it's worth building well, we should like really deeply reflect on why are we doing it at all?
This could be in the context of inventors, like we were talking about earlier. Could be in the context of art, of companies. Who are, we've talked about probably a few of them. Who are the people who have been most influential on you?
I mean, I have like two answers to this. One is like some of the people that are like close to us now, or just like, I mean, in general. I mean, I obviously the guy that wrote Momo,
Michael Ende.
yeah, Michael Ende,
I'm sorry.
a bunch of other authors that, that I, whose work I love. But then, and then, there's the people that are close to us now. I think Ben is like a huge, he's going to hate me saying this, but like, it's a hugely, like you're such an incredible product thinker, and like just, and I think that like really inspires me, and also like so uniquely like loved by just really everyone that has ever met and interacted with him. Such a good human, and surely also Evan, who I think is just built like a really like a factory that, and it's much less for me about like the product. I never really use Snapchat. I don't like, it's not like my brand. It's like not the thing, but like he's really kind of like built sort of this like group of people that have like pretty much invented every paradigm of modern, mobile internet, products. And it's like swipe-based navigation, stories, like so many things that they've kind of like came out of their thing, and then they kind of in some scenarios under executed on, and then like other people copied it, and and all of these things. But they were really at the sort of ground zero of a lot of these things, and that's like a really special thing, especially if you get to do it like over and over and over again. And I really look up to Claire a lot, and what
Claire
she's
Hughes Johnson.
Yeah, and what she's built at Stripe, and like the way she's like designed a lot of these things that made Stripe such an incredible company. And the list goes like on and on. I think Steve Jobs is obviously in many ways built incredibly magical products that like a lot of have changed the world and like a lot of people's lives in very meaningful ways. And Dieter Rams, who's like a designer who actually lives in my hometown.
Really?
Yeah.
I've probably seen video of your hometown in the documentary then, maybe. Got a beautiful house.
Yeah. He's incredible, and like he
You ever met him?
Yeah.
You have?
My grandpa's a good friend of my grandpa, who now lives in like the same building with my grandpa lives in, was his boss, and he was like the CEO of Brown during that time.
Wow.
And so we've interact with all of them like a bit, and just like, I mean, before I even knew what that was. And
Dieter would have a field day with whatever this is.
Yeah. He would, and he's such a incredible. But at the end of the day, I think there's something to be said about all of these people who we're definitely standing on sort of their shoulders, and again, that's what I said earlier, which is I get to like do this, which is like the second greatest privilege of my life, but I get to do it surrounded by these people who have, like, again, without all these people, the world that I grew up in would have looked completely different. Like no Pinterest, no Snapchat, no iPhones, no like all of these. I remember my first iPod. Like all of these things were so influential. But then there's another thing, which is like, I think the greatest creations aren't referential, and they're not like I'm not trying to be Apple. I'm trying to be Eigen, and I think, of course, everything I've ever consumed in my entire life is influencing me and my mind. But I think if you can like pinpoint it, and if you can be like, this is the person, or I'm trying to copy this here, you're kind of doing it wrong. And I think that's something that why sometimes when people ask me this question of like, what are the brands that you like try and get inspiration from to do this, I don't know. I can't pinpoint it to this one thing. I'm just like trying to figure out what does it mean to be us, and of course, what does it mean to be us is like influence from all of the stimulation that my brain has experienced in my entire life, but it's not this like one thing. And
well, it's not conscious.
It's not conscious, and I think if it is conscious, it's like, I don't know if it's the same level of authentic, and I think parts are maybe conscious, and I think I also have like this the like I go back and forth on whether I really disagree or really agree with this like Virgil thing of like, every creation is just like a 3% change, right? And it's just like, and I think you can like marry both, which is like it can still be really like subconscious, but like of course, it's like we're not creating the model, right? We're not like we're not inventing most of the UI. There's like it's kind of like a lot of what goes into building this is kind of already out there, right? There's like all these books of like sociology, psychology, like storytelling. Like there's all these like people who have like thought about things, and that sort of subconsciously or sometimes consciously goes into that. And really it's just about like assembling kind of the pieces in like a way that is like, adding like your little bit of like extra piece of, grain of salt.
Well, I think there's a lot of 3% that happened for Paul.
Yeah.
That led to this big thing. And that was a bunch of cascading. And one day you wake up and you have a genius idea or a crazy idea. I know you don't. You were kind of rejecting this a little bit, but not as inspiration. I'm just curious are there any favorite consumer products or experiences that come to mind?
I love Teenage Engineering. Wow. I think they're like the absolute pinnacle of like, contemporary like industrial design. They really love what they're doing. Their products are deeply thought through and cared about, and I think there's something very rare about it. I know the folks that started it, and they're just like on a different level of thinking about it. I think there's not been a lot of great consumer companies, and so there's sort of like not that many cool people who are like contemporary, and I think a lot of the last generation is sort of like slightly past their like stride of like, is Instagram still like a great Instagram when it came out was like really innovative, and like they're like Mikey and Kevin, and you really had a lot of thoughts there, and you just same with like Snapchat, but like now it's sort of they've like established their thing. It's like not bad anymore. But I think Teenage Engineering, even though they are actually quite an old brand,
doing this for a while, right? What would you say to people like a lot of like they make beautiful objects? A lot of venture capitalists with whatever the synthesizer on their wall. What is the click below that
of why they're great?
Yeah,
I think they like just they're using their own product. It's like it's just like they're not just beautiful. They're like I always say there's sort of there's a difference between like design and product, which a lot of people don't notice, and it's like sort of the difference between if you were to build a house, there's like architecture and there's like the finishes of the house, right? And if you want to live in like a 10 out of 10 house, you need both, right? Like a 10 out of 10 house that has like really cheap and ugly finishes, and it's like painted in this, it's not a great house, right? It's like you wouldn't enjoy living in that house. But what's almost more important, I would say, it's almost like it is like the layout, right? The architecture, the sort of, and that's like product, right? It's like where is how far away is your kitchen from your dining room? If you sometimes have like a hallway that is so narrow that you can't open like the two doors at the same time, but maybe it's like your laundry room and your bathroom, and you kind of like you have to like go out of your bathroom, close the door, like open it. Like that's not a great house to live in, even though
it's beautiful.
The finishes might be amazing, and the incredible product is like lived in. It's like something that you just know someone cared about, not just making it look pretty, but making it be a delightful experience to use it. Again, there's almost no glory in prevention, which is just you don't notice it, but I think you do feel like a sense of like love, which is like very
taken care of.
Yes.
And
ease. And
my friend Stefango has this idea of in good hands. It's omakase. It's like
exactly. In good hands. Because that someone had to really put a lot of love into making that great for you.
Yeah.
There's like, it's like the same thing with like, there's like a surprising amount of detail and reality of like, people had to like actually think this really through.
Yes.
And they've done that for you, but you don't have to do it anymore.
Yes. Yeah. Jerry Seinfeld, I always love bringing this up. Jerry Seinfeld said, all art is disguising work, which I think is it's a beautiful, like you didn't notice. It's the same as your no glory in prevention. I just have a few more things. Where does your self-belief come from? Why are you so confident?
I don't know. I've never thought I was a confident person. I'm sure I am in some ways. I think I sometimes tell this story of like I think I was like a genuinely advanced like 7-year-old kid, intellectually advanced, socially probably like behind, but um and so I had this like sense of like everyone was just like constantly telling me I was special, and I'm sure that like by the time I was like 10, all of this completely vanished, and it's like any potential head start that I had got vanished, but I still have this like sense of like sort of people were telling me I was like special, and I was like I don't think I ever really was pessimistic about the like future. I always just, I was paranoid and, suffering in the present.
It was what we were talking about at the top, which is getting to the point where you actually were doing the thing.
But even now, right? It's like, you're just like, why does this thing take so long? Like, why do you not, do this better? Like, why does this, like, with that part of the product suck? Like, that's like sort of very like, just like, I'm not content. But I was like, there's no fucking way that like 10 years from now, like, we're not going to be like, wildly successful in any such way. I just like that. I don't have like any doubt in that, and it's going to be really difficult, and it's going to be, like 10 years from now, I'd be like, today I'd be like, oh, this, and I would feel exactly the same, which is like, why is this not, better? Why is like, why are we not like pushing harder here? Like, why are we moving so slowly? Right. Like that, like the local point doesn't really change, but the like, but the long term, horizon is just like, I've always felt like everything always sort of worked out. Like you could just I really do believe people can do and get whatever they want if they just focus. You can't get everything, but you can get anything. I really do think you can get anything. And people still to this day don't believe me. And then they like experience it. And we were just like, no, like I didn't just like, it was funny because one of the first angel investors was like, sorry, they can tell with Zach. It was just like, we were just like talking about it, and he was like, yeah, and I was like, no, you didn't understand what I wasn't asking you whether or not you wanted to invest in this company. I was like asking you how much you wanted to invest in the company. Like this, we've passed this decision, and I think there's something about it that, I just decided it. I was like, I really like Zach, and I want him to be an investor, and so I told him, I was like, I just really like you, and I think you should be part of this journey, and I think you can do these things.
Why Eigen?
The name, there's so many. It's like I have to admit that some of this is post hoc. Like it's like,
Of course,
it's
a beautiful thing. You get to narrativize in reverse.
Yes, which the best narratives are always made up. And he's like, oh, we were so smart back then. It's like we were just like, oh, we were just like, there's like a thing where we were saying something we really needed a name, and so we had to come up with a name, and we just like really needed that one. And so but I think it's a great name because it means so many things that are all kind of relevant. So there's like, I mean, it means like to be Eigen in German. Like if you say you're Eigen, like you're like distinct, like slightly weird, like a unique kind of like character. And it also means like, oh, and then obviously there's like in math, there's like sort of like the eigenvalues or the eigenvectors, which are like inherent value, and there's like the eigenspace, which is like if I like wait, this is not a good book to do this with, but if I like turn this like this, right, there's like this axis in the middle, like here, that stays constant, right, and that's like the eigenspace
in the center.
It's like the center, it's like stable, constant, it's like inherent, defined in some way, and I think that's kind of fitting to what we're doing.
Do you think you're authentic? It's a complicated word.
Yeah, I think a lot of people say that. I think some of the best people are kind of like sponges, where you just, I think like authenticity is like, who are you, right? What is it like to be authentic means to be truly yourself, but like who are you, and like what version of yourself, am I the same version with you that I am with my mom? I know, but I think there's there's something genuine, I think, in all of the things that we're doing, where you do the things that you just really believe in. And I think that's like something that I've always done, and maybe that is authentic, which is as never the kind of person to like write like a pros and cons list and be like, should I like go, take this opportunity? It's like, here's like all this and it's good. It's like my suspicion is that everyone is kind of the same in that we all have this like inner voice.
You know what you need to do.
And I think adulting in a lot of ways is like learning to not listen to that voice. Yeah. Just do all these other people, these other things. But I feel like I always just listen to that voice. And everything I've ever done, every major decision was always just like, I was like, okay, I know that it's like, this is just my voice, and I just like, I have to do it. And I like followed my heart or whatever you want to call it. But it's like, it's all about that part. And maybe that's authenticity, or maybe that's something else, but it's like, I feel like I always, and then, once I stopped believing it, I just like very quickly, just like, I have no nostalgia and this, I'm just like, this is, I don't believe in this anymore. I cannot do it. I cannot do it.
Can't fake it.
I can't fake it. And I think that might be authenticity.
You have these two metaphors around learning and maybe finger feel, to use a Brie idea. The first is the smelling versus tasting bread, and the second is the iPad takes. Can you talk about this?
Well, I always like, this is a very German thing to do, of just like making up these like crazy metaphors. But I've been kind of like doing startups since I was like, 16, 17 years old. So like, the last 6 years or something like that. And I was always like really like early, like not founder, but like sort of like just after the founder. And like very generalist, so kind of like a very like founder like role with a lot of like control, and impact in the company. And so I kind of naturally always just assumed as like, I'm kind of like a founder, right? I just like know how this works. And it's like, and I was like, well, this is like, it's like I'm like a founder, right? It's like kind of like the same as like, and then I like became a founder. And it was like, I was like, well, so, I was really experienced in smelling bread. And I was like, and
I'm all around bread, right?
All around
I know
bread.
all about bread.
Yeah, I know all about bread. I'd smelled it, but I'd like never tasted it. And then I took a big bite and I was like, this is very different. I'm not actually, it's like now, and it's like, it's maybe like in the same way that, you are, when how you think it is going to be to have kids versus to actually have kids, right? It's like just something you think but then you actually be like, okay, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what I think. I mean, I don't know. I've never had kids. And I think part of it is too that, and that these are sort of the iPad takes, which is like in very similar ways, like kind of similar way to describing, or like it's a different way to describe the similar thing, which is, there's like, and I joke about this a lot with Sarah, because there's like these, whenever you go to like a coffee shop or a cafe or something, and there's like, some parents with like little kids, and it's like in front of an iPad, and everyone is like, how could you give your kid an iPad? Which is probably, globally true, is probably not very good for like a 5-year-old to spend 10 hours a day just like looking at an iPad. But then you have kids and they're like really fucking annoying. And like they yell all day, they scream and shout and do all these things. And you're just like tired, right? And you're like, what? And there's this like thing that you can give it to them and they're going to shut up.
Ultimate pacifier.
And so it's very easy if you don't have kids to be like, well, can you imagine someone do this, right? But then you have kids and you're like in this, and I think there's a lot of these things with founding too, where it's like very easy for these people on the sidelines to be like, this is the perfect company, and how can you like, it's like it's almost like any kind of organization has this. You still have this as like an early stage startup versus like a later stage. It's like these companies like, we're never gonna have PMs. And at some point, eventually, they're all going to hire PMs, because they're just like, okay, we figured out that like this was a really nice, this was really nice when we were like 10 people, but now we're like 200 people, and like everything is like going all. We just really need a PM, right? And it's like these are. I think iPad takes are kind of all of these like really like generalized pieces of advice, like PMs are bad now. By the way, I don't even know really what a PM is. I never worked at like a large company, but just like this idea of like PMs are bad. you can't have like meetings, or you can't have like the one thing that I like learned is like anything works. Like you as a founder get to like set gravity, right? Earth's gravity. And your planet's gravity can be 20, it can be like -10, it can be 1. The only thing that matters is that it's like consistent. And like every day you show up and it's like it's whatever you set it to. And and horrible things happen if you're like inconsistent in it, but as long as you're consistent, it can be literally anything. And there's like incredibly successful founders who are like the most insane micromanagers in the world. There's like incredibly successful founders who like do not give a shit and are like very hands off. And it's like there's no rule. If there was a rule, all of these people that are talking about the rules would actually go build very large companies, because that's much more profitable if it was this easy than to just like talk about rules, right? Like there'd be like so many books of like the ultimate recipe, just follow these steps and you're going to build a large company. Here, I figured it out for you. There are a lot of these books, but none of these books work because there aren't any rules other than that you just have to figure out what works for you and ideally be authentic. And so there's a lot of these like iPad takes where it's like, okay, I'm not going to have PMs. And then really need PMs. And you're just like, you grow up, you have kids, you're like, shit, it is really appealing to give them an iPad. And maybe you should have some empathy for that. And once you sort of eat the bread, you come to realize that smelling bread isn't everything.
There's This Is Water by David Foster Wallace is on your virtual shelf. Why is that meaningful? It's one of my favorites. I figured I'd ask.
It's so good. It's like it kind of is very similar to this in some ways. It's about like this like the like like standard beliefs of like and just like kind of pushing back on that a bit and being like there's like a very almost like this like almost like absurdist slash amusing and like fun way of like looking at things being like this doesn't matter, but like that's kind of cool. And then there's obviously the sad part, which is that like he's very depressed and like ended up killing himself, and like all of these things, which obviously is like often very close together when you like look at the world in like a very almost nihilistic, but I don't mean it from again the negative sense of things, but just like okay, there's no purpose or no bigger thing that he believed in. But I think there's something in that, there's something beautiful in that, which is there's like a beauty and a magic, and we don't quite know. And I think it means that the things matter much less. And there's like we are in this like in this very limited scope perception of reality. What we one of the most transforming experiences is to like rent a car in San Francisco and like drive 30 minutes north, and it's just like there's like there's like woodworkers and like farmers and these like 30 minutes, right? It's 30 minutes outside San Francisco that have like nothing to do with tech, and they're just like in Marin County or like Napa or whatever, and it's just like and they're like reality is so different than our reality, and like the things they think about and they care about, they're worried about are like so different, and that's like like not like you can fly to a different continent, it's like 10 times that, 100 times that, right? And but yet we're in this like really small scope reality of taking all of the things that are in our head so incredibly seriously, that it can like mire us and like almost like put us in this like position of like not being able to do anything because we're so taking these so seriously. But some other people would think it's completely ridiculous, because it's like I think what I like about David Foster Wallace in lots of ways is very similar to like Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot of like it's perspective. Everything is about perspective. Everything is about.
That was what I alluded to earlier. I mean, I think in some sense what you're doing is the key is getting out from under yourself. And like the reason oftentimes people are alone and they don't belong is that they're looking at all of the reasons the world isn't like meeting them where they're at.
Yeah.
And what I always loved about This Is Water is that it's like you can either worship something related to yourself or you can find something else.
Yeah. I think like there's like this, not to be political, but there's just like this like perception of like saying that you can do anything is a very privileged take, and like a very like, well, but you had all this like privilege and like you came from whatever, you didn't have to worry about like getting food. And but I always found that a very limiting way of looking at it, because basically for two reasons. One is like, I think it can be really empowering. It's like, if you're not happy with where you are, it's like, and if you say, even if you go as far as saying, well, that might be your fault because the actions you took so far are really bad, that's actually really empowering, because it means you're a few great decisions away from like that not being the case anymore, and it's not actually about someone else. It's like, it's in your power, and whether or not that's true largely is like a different question, but it is really empowering to like feel about feel like that. And it's also like much more productive, right? Because like the best way of staying in a situation that you don't enjoy is like being like, I'm like, if it wasn't your fault that you're in that position, you're also unable to leave that position, and that's really sad. And so I think of course there's like differences, and some people have like an easier time getting to places, but everyone has like some sort of like power over what are the decisions they take. And I think I think there's something, if you have that perspective, like, no, actually it's like none of these things really are true. I just like get to, like, our mutual friend Sayan is like such a great example of that, of just like, no, actually I get to like create my reality, and it's really true. Like, it's like she can just do that, and it's like you meet Sayan and you're like, there's like, not in 100 years this wouldn't have worked, right? Like,
Yes.
like there's like, you could drop her anywhere like 300,000 times and it would always work out, because she just like really believes that you can create your own reality. And I think more people should believe that.
I like to ask people, we talk about big regrets. What are you most glad you did?
I think there was like a really profound period of August, September, November, like last year, where I went from like outsider, to like at like a kind of like a scary speed, from a complete rando who's like, I knew no one in San Francisco. I was building this like weird thing, and to like, now I'm just like, this Monday I was like texting Ben. I was like, oh, I'm thinking through this thing. And Tuesday he spent like 2 hours with me at the office thinking about the founder of Pinterest, thinking about like how we should build product. And like I text like Gustav, the CEO of Spotify, and we're like, we've been thinking about music recommendations. And then it's like, I kind of wonder, can we get this API? And it's like that, like, where it's become so normalized also in my life so quickly, where I'm just like, not even, I sometimes would like call a friend from before. I'd be like, oh, I was like talking with Gustav about this, and he was like, what? Just, that's kind of crazy. And I don't know how that happened. Like, this is like I think this is like a very profound period of like, maybe it was just Peter saying yes, and just, uh, and like all of these things that came downstream. But I really do think it was more because there was like people before, met Gustav pre benchmark, for example, and like there's like, this period of just like sort of like really going out, and for the first time being maybe like fully authentic, because it wasn't for another company, but it was just like, here's the thing I'm creating. And like, and obviously the way I talk about it has like changed so much over like the last few months. But I think maybe a lot of people should have the courage to like, I told you about Stephen Perrone, like our very first angel investor. And I remember talking with him about this, just before. So it was like, it must have been like in August, late August or something like that. And I think, maybe what changed or what happened is that like, if you go out and you meet a lot of people and you just like, courageously tell them about the world you're creating, fearlessly telling about the world you're creating, without any like expectation. And without that being any like, I don't need to convince you. I'm just telling you without fear, just pure here's the world I'm.
Here's what I see.
And I wonder what would happen if like more people did that.
That's like a powerful message. I think courage is the operative word. I think courage is in short supply. And I think my suspicion, what happened for you, is that you had a strong and unique point of view. It was a little bit strange, and that's very attractive. Even if it's incomplete, it's dialing into focus. One last thing. You've tweeted, consumer products tend to be the result of character deficiencies of their founders. And I asked a mutual friend of ours, you know who, what I should ask you if they had a question for you, if he had a question for you. He said, I'd ask him if he's building me to be vulnerable with people so that he doesn't have to be. He wants me to be this social bridge that connects everyone, but he's so notoriously guarded himself. So I want to know if I'm basically just doing his emotional heavy lifting.
That's a great question. That's funny. Yeah, I don't know if I can like disagree with that. I do think there's something in that. I think people, it's a thing that actually, Kate, Peter's wife, I stole it from her. And she must have had this like incredible outlook on like social founders throughout the years. And maybe probably there's a pattern there.
I think you're on your way, as we all are. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Once again, I'd like to thank Notion for presenting Dialectic. Notion is pushing the limits on what we can do together with AI. And thanks to custom agents, you and your team can have an entire suite, an army of little guys who help you focus on the work that counts. Being able to have access to agents inside of the context where everything else for your team and your work lives is remarkably powerful. For Dialectic, that allows me to take the place where I have all my research and my ideas and my notes, synthesize them with transcripts and everything else, and be able to provide it for you guys in a way that enriches the experience, hopefully, of listening to Dialectic, while I get to focus on the important thing, which is immersing myself in the minds of amazing, original, interesting people and having these conversations with them. My friend Bree Wolfson, who's also close with Paul, recently wrote a piece on Notion called Inside Notion for Colossus with her collaborator, Camille. It talks all about how Notion is reinventing itself from the ground up for the AI age to allow teams and individuals to do incredible work with immense leverage thanks to agents. If you enjoyed the episode, please give it 5 stars or subscribe or like wherever you're watching. And I also included a little bit at the end, which is me and Paul walking around the office and him showing me a little bit of the world behind the scenes. Once again, thanks to Notion. That's notion.com/dialectic. And I will see you guys next time. What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. I'm here with Paul. We just did an interview, and I wanted to, I've tried to do more of this in the past, and I haven't really done it, but you have a crazy office with a bunch of weird objects, so I wanted to learn about them.
Cool.
What are we, first of all,
Why is this there?
this was nearly in the background of our,
We decided it was going to be too performative.
I banned it. What the heck is going on here?
So this actually wait. So
It's basically what it does on the website. There you go.
yes, it's actually, we recorded the sound. It's like the sound.
Okay.
And it's also, we took a photo of it and like we just made that thing the thing. My friend Brian really wanted to invest in our last round, and he's really into dinosaurs. And I was like, well, you have to tell me a dinosaur. And you can buy real dinosaurs, like the
bones.
bones and stuff.
Okay.
But it's like very, very expensive. So I have the receipts. So I was like, he's like, okay, if you're ever gonna make us money, I'm gonna buy you a dinosaur. And he's like, I'm gonna regret this tax. It's gonna be really weird. But anyways,
Oh,
he's
so like if Eigen returns his capital,
Yes.
he
which
promised you
he
a
says
dinosaur.
he's gonna really regret because it might, it's a very expensive thing to do. Anyways, so I was like, no, I want a dinosaur now. I don't care about it. I was like, I want a dinosaur now. And then he sent me on Amazon this thing, and ever since it's just been at my desk, and I just like. And it roars, and it's like, it's great. And I think it's important, though, that we left it in the package, because it's like, it adds to the tackiness. It's
Right.
like really tacky because it's like
It's also a deeply non-tacky office.
Yeah. But but there's a lot of tacky things in the office. Maybe not a lot, but there's a bunch of tacky things in here that,
All right, we have a few other things from this website. We have the typewriter,
Yeah.
the Concorde. Where, first of all, most startup offices don't look like this. Where did all this stuff come from? Why are you like this? We have Joni over here. We have the Joni Apple ad.
almost everything is like, basically everything here is like secondhand sourced somewhere from like flea markets or like stuff we just had, or people, like stuff that people gifted us, or
Okay.
things that just kind of like have a story or just like ended up here somehow through coincidence, and we just decided to keep them.
What's the story of the Concorde typewriter?
So there's like, basically, Peter had like this typewriter in like not this very one, but like this exact same typewriter
Actually works.
at his house.
Nice.
And I was like, we have to have a typewriter. And I really like, Christopher Nolan writes all his scripts on a typewriter. And then he has like one
J.J.
version
Abrams
of it
too.
on like red paper, so you can't photocopy it. And he'll like fly it to the person, and he doesn't even have a phone or an email, so like his wife
Right.
will call like Robert Downey Jr. and it'll be like, this is like Christopher Nolan. He's like, you're good news, you're playing in the new movie, right? He's like, this is Robert Downey Jr. Like, and they fly to him with the script, the one script they have, and he like will give it to them. He's sitting next to them as they read it.
Oh my gosh.
And they don't know which role they're gonna play, right? And he's just like, you're gonna play in this movie
One of
a
these
role
characters.
that I will like tell you at some point who it is. And
Wow.
and so I like the idea of like typewriters. There's something creatively limiting to it.
What's going on art-wise over here?
This is all. I mean, we're gonna change some of this. I want it to be like a gallery a bit. Like this is gonna be very dark, but
Got some Matisse.
these are all. I
Yeah,
mean,
they're not gonna see it, but-
these are all like. I mean, some of this is so. This is like a German artist, Ernst Ludwig Kirchner, which who I really love. He's like, I've been looking at his art with my grandpa for a long time when I was like a kid. And
This
is like,
one? Or several of these?
All these three.
Wow.
And then this is Olga Bunches van Beek, which is like it's like a very, very, not at all, it's increasingly like slightly more popular, but she's like from where at the town my grandma grew up in like northern Germany. It's like really niche. And she has actually, this one she owns, like the actual one. I mean, it's not nothing like super expensive or crazy, but it's like something I really like. And it's become a bit more, but then Muro is like obviously more of a thing, and I really like Edward Hopper.
I was gonna say that looks like Hopper. What's going on here?
Oh, so basically this entry there, we're gonna create like a speakeasy-like curtain.
Okay.
So it's gonna be like
You're testing velvets.
this, like that, where it's like really like thick, and then you're just like gonna like have this like full like wall there, just like this separating the entry room from the main office.
I had to, lo and behold, I had to like go to this German museum in New York to find the lone copy of Momo because it's not on Amazon. Little did I know, you've been buying them all.
Yeah.
Literally every copy.
Yeah, even different versions and stuff.
This we talked about as well.
Yeah.
Peter gave you a bunch of books. What were the other books?
He gave me this. He gave me actually very much this copy. I think it was this copy of Why We Remember, which he directs.
Some early Momos.
Yeah, I have a first edition too.
Do you? Wow.
It's like a 1973 first edition.
There we go.
And then Bree gave this to me. But I have a first edition of Carl Rogers as well.
I love that book.
The-
Oh, this is Carl.
This is On Becoming a Person.
Wow.
From
Have you read Momo in English and in German?
I'm mostly read in German.
I was gonna say, I'm curious.
1961.
Wow.
And this is from Bree.
That's one of my favorites.
We have like a Spanish version of Momo too.
This is a pretty popular book. At least it was translated into a bunch of variations.
Yeah, that's true. It's very nice illustrations. All the, Santa Fe Institute network effect books from Bill. Bill's like Running Down a Dream book, which is really great too. I don't know if you've read it.
I haven't. I've heard the talk. What do you think of? I'm going to ask you a super annoying question. How did you develop your taste?
There's just strong opinions on things that I like, and I change them out. I think this is like very, there's like some people who think they have taste, and then they just like buy the Herman Miller catalog, and they're just like, you don't really have taste, you have money. Like,
Speaking of,
yeah, I mean, this is Herman Miller, but like, there's also like this chair there, which is like $20 or something off of like a flea market, and this Percival Laffer couch over there, which is like, you just have to like see what you like.
do you think most people have good taste in like most areas? Or do you think taste is unevenly distributed? Do you think you have bad taste in any categories?
Probably. I do think it's a lot about like conviction too.
Yeah.
Of like people just
Yeah,
follow conviction. And so if
Yeah.
you're just really confident, like if you can like make everything look fashionable if you really like.
You know how to wear it.
Yeah. It's like really funny, like, Paul Graham and his like hideous shorts and like polo, like talking about taste. It's like the important
Paul
thing
has
about
great taste in some
Yeah, he
categories.
does. He does in some ways, but like it's like, yeah, I don't know. I think it's just like, I think great taste often is just authenticity, and it's just like you just do the thing that you really like, and he just doesn't. He just like doesn't care. He just like, and I do think sometimes it's like more narrow scoped, and I'm sure there's like, I probably don't have great taste in like algorithms and like programming languages, and you know, Samuel might have great taste in programming languages.
All right, you need to have the finger feel.
Yeah.
How many people do you think will be in this room working here in, right now it's May, in December? You're 6? What do you expect?
I think in December we might be 16, 20 in December.
Wow, so that gives
It's
you,
like the most-
that means by next May you're out of this office.
We can, I want to get the floor above.
Kyle, who's sitting over here off camera, I think has a screenwriting background. What is the most strange role you can imagine hiring for in the near to medium term?
I think nothing you could say would be like crazy enough, because it's like anything.
In-house
like,
musician?
We've been
live
thinking about it.
performance?
You know, when we did like our office warming, we had like a jazz band here.
Nice. Any other crazy hires? Filmmaker in residence,
I think, yeah, I think like just,
philosopher. You gotta have a philosopher.
yeah, we gotta have a philosopher at some point. All these things you can pay for once you have a great product. You know, you can all these pet projects and
You got a
distractions.
pretty nice office. No product yet.
We have a product.
Yeah,
It's not
it's true. It's true. No product in the world.
No, well, it is in the world. It's just not in a lot
In
of
the-
people's sense. Yeah, that's
The Illuminati have access, and I'm counting
Yes.
myself in that. Any reflections on making and then putting out the announcement video?
I think we like really encapsulated our quality bar and our way of telling a story.
Yeah.
And we didn't do that many things, but the things that we did do, we did well. And I think if people look at it, they can like see that we're not just fucking around. Like we actually care about the things that we're creating. It's like a piece of work that we can be proud of 10, 20 years from now.
That's a lot to say for an announcement video, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't think it was an announcement video. I don't like when people call it like a
Yeah.
launch video or something. We did like we created a movie. We told a story,
Yeah.
and you could like decide whether or not you resonate with that story or not.
What did you learn from Cliff?
He's awesome. He was actually such a star. Like it's pretty crazy. I don't think I would have been like a pain in the ass at like whatever.
How old is
like
he?
7 or
Yeah.
something. He was here for two days. It was just like I mean, we bought him lots of Legos and.
He was
Pokemon
amazing though.
cards.
That Bree pointed this out, but there's that scene where you're
Yeah.
like nervous and he quiets your leg, and it was
He was a star.
special. All right, I think that's all I got. Anybody else want to say hi or?
Simon, you really want to say hello, right?
Samuel? You have anything else you want to say?
Check my podcast. It's the Dialect podcast. It's gonna launch tomorrow, and it's
Getting front run.
It's really great conversations with smart people. Actually, it's like we ask bad questions.
Right.
That's our
Bad questions only. That's all we got.
bad questions with
I'll see you guys next
medium
time.
smart people.
Thanks, Paul.